Welcome to Reclaim the Law, hosted by Nick St. Clare, director of the world-infamous Eco-Tort Theatre Company.
Friends, humans, countryfolk, lend us your ears. We come to change our government, not to praise it. To disempower the shirking element who on their backsides sit, while gathering our taxes who say they're doing their bit. Our environment was heaven sent. Did you see where it went? It must be bent. It must be negligent on the part of the government to authorise so much harm to this world which has such charm. So while the government continues to fail to provide the resources we need to prevent this suicide, we'll pay no more tax revenue to continue down this avenue of destruction and disaster. They're our servants, we're their masters. It's unlawful to pay a servant to commit a negligent act. The government are civil servants. We, their masters, pay them. That's where it's at. So we'll pay no more tax until the government acts to facilitate the nation's environment salvation. Only true respect for creation can save us from damnation.
Hi everyone, this is Colleen, and we have a special show tonight. Nick St. Clare of Eco-Tort. Let me pull up his website for you. That would be Eco, E-C-O-T-O-R-T, ecotort.blogspot.co.uk. That's his website. He also is on Facebook and on YouTube. Go to YouTube and just look for Eco-Tort. Again, E-C-O-T-O-R-T. All right, Nick. Turning it over to you now.
Said. The entire hashtag Standing Rock, hashtag 1 billion veterans. Now, you might question 1 billion veterans, but I'm including ancestors in that. The entire movement will not stop. And it will not succeed until the entire rank and file police, fire brigade, armed forces and intelligence services of the USA and the rest of the world are publicly made fully aware of the heinous and known, hence criminal, deadly collective toxic threat to themselves, their friends, their families and their children, which is directly due to 1. Fracking, 2. Coal seam gas, 3. Tar sands, and 4. The satanic spider's web of leaking and dysfunctional pipelines to carry highly toxic crude oil and gas across land and water. Okay? So that statement there is what I'm saying. The rank and file of the police, armed forces, fire brigade, intelligence services of the USA in particular, but in general of the world, need to know. And then we'll stop fracking and all these pipelines and things that will be dead in the water, in my opinion. This known and deadly criminal threat is a real and present danger to the entire population of the USA and the world at large, due to long-term fatal poisoning of the land, air and water with deadly poisonous crude oils and gases. This is because these structures unavoidably leak. It is an engineering fact. If you watch the videos of Anthony and Graffia, which I will post a link to in fact I'll do it right now before I forget. He talks in particular here about fracking, but he points out, as a late middle-aged gentleman, that as structures age, they tend to not work as well. And that includes pipelines, it includes the pipes under the ground, millions of miles of pipes under the ground. For fracking, those structures degenerate and they leak. It is an unavoidable engineering fact. And in fact, in the case of fracking, Mr. Ngraffia gives industry figures which state that 1 in 20 frack wells leak immediately when they're brand new. 1 in 10 is leaking after a year. And 60%, 6 out of 10, are leaking after 20 years. Now, in the UK, they want to drill 60% of this country at a certain rate of, I think it's about 8 or 10 wells per square mile. That works out at 480,000 holes they want to drill in the UK, 90% of which are going through the aquifers. I'm getting a bit devolved into fracking, but it's important to know this. The fact is, when they drill a hole, we're only talking about the vertical part of the well leaking. Now, that's the only bit they can really measure, because the rest of the gas is coming up from the horizontal bit, and that can come up anywhere through the land. You see it bubbling up through rivers, but it's coming up all through the land, this toxic, nasty, crude gas. It's not like the gas you get out of the tap. It's not sweet smelling like that. It's like rotten eggs. It's got hydrogen sulfide. It's got cyanide, all kinds of horrible toxic acids, alkalis, God knows what in there, which the people are breathing, which animals are breathing. It's poisoning the grass, the land, the fruit trees, everything. That's what's happening intensively all across Pennsylvania. And that gas is obviously bubbling up through the aquifers, and that's why they're getting gas in their aquifers. But just talking about the vertical part of the well, 60% of them have failed after 20 years. Now, say in the UK case, 480,000 holes they want to drill, they'll get to drill 400,000 holes if everything goes according to head, if they're allowed to drill even one hole. Right? 480,000 holes. They'll get 400,000 drilled, right? And of those, 5%, 20,000 will leak immediately. 10%, 10,000 will leak. 10%, which is 40,000, will leak after a year. And 60% is 6 4 to 24, 240,000. You can safely say, after 20 years, 250,000 of those wells will be leaking oil and gas for the foreseeable future into the UK aquifers. And that's the actual engineering facts, that's industry figures of what will happen in the UK. And it's what's already happened all over Pennsylvania. Everywhere they've fracked, this is exactly the same story. It's because of these leaking seals, leaking cement seals. Right, so, and that's just the underground part of fracking. It's not talking about pipelines, it's not talking about tankers, or the processing plants, or just the fracking part. So that's one of the 4 methods by which the oil and gas industry is killing us. Fracking, coal seam gas, tar sands, and the pipeline network, which leaks all the time. This known and deadly threat is a real and present threat to the entire population of the United States and the world at large due to long-term fatal poisoning of the land, air and water with deadly poisonous crude oils and gases. We call on the Army Corps of Engineers, who are fully aware of the nature and extent of this deadly criminal threat by DAPL, to the people of the United States, to make a full statement explaining in detail as to why, as public servants, they are not already engaged in a wholesale action of dismantling the entire deadly and criminal infrastructure of the corporate oil industry, which has already, for example, poisoned 3 generations of urban children with carbon monoxide emitted from vehicle exhaust pipes at child height, thereby causing permanent brain damage in those children. Make America great again. That's the topic now that I want to address. We need to get DAPL, the Royal Corps of Engineers, has to make a statement. They have to be forced into making a statement. So, Colleen, would you ask me a question or something? Give me a bit of feedback or something like that? Then I can.
Alrighty. How are we going to go about forcing them?
By making a statement like this, of this nature, and making it very public. And they have to respond.
Okay, so everybody share this information on their their social media. That's the word I'm looking at. Talk to people about this stuff. I don't know that you need to shout it from the rooftops, but talk about it a lot. Let people know these truths. Because the oil companies and those invested in them are lying their butts off about it. It's safe, right? That's what they tell us.
They're not just doing this knowingly, they're doing it intentionally. I've got very little doubt about that. Not the engineers themselves, but the financiers who are behind it. I mean, it all comes down to money. that statement actually goes on a bit after. I'll read the rest of it because it is relevant. Make America Great Again.
Yeah.
That's relevant to the children not being brain damaged by carbon monoxide. People will say that they've got lead-free petrol and catalytic converters now, but fact is that a catalytic converter takes 5 miles to warm up before it starts to get to work properly, holding back sort of quite a small percentage of the noxious chemicals coming out of an exhaust pipe. And 80% of car journeys are under 5 miles, so it doesn't really work. So they're still getting poisoned by carbon monoxide, despite all the hype about catalytic converters and lead-free petrol. So the answer, if we can get a response from the Army Corps of Engineers, which is what I intend with this missive, right? Why, as a public servant, they're not already engaged in dismantling the poisonous? I mean, if I went to a water supply and tipped a gallon of crude oil in it, I'd be locked up. But they're doing it wholesale all over the United States of America, where they choose. Anyway, so the answer boils down to money, right? Why are they doing it? It's down to money. It's not down to, do we have the resources or the skills or the labour or the whatever we need to produce renewables? We do. We've had it for a long time. We could have totally clean combustion, even if we're using petrochemicals. There's all kinds of answers. We've got loads of technology and resources and people to do it, willing to do it. The only thing it comes down to is money. Right? The answer boils down to money. I'm going to post this bit of the message as well, and I can read it and you can see it while I'm reading it, because it's kind of easier, I think, that way. Sometimes people like to read things.
Okay, I want to put this in here. You know, on this DAPL pipeline that the Army Corps of Engineers just gave the go-ahead for, you know, the final easement into Lake Oahu. A few days ago, Mr. Trump said that these pipes would be much, much safer if we use American-made steel in the pipelines. What is your response to that claim?
Well, I made quite a lengthy response to it all over Facebook, because I was quite amused by that. It means basically that if the steelwork of the petrochemical industry, shall we put it like that, including oil rigs which break up at sea, including pipelines, including the whole works, right, the whole lot, the fracking pipes, underground fracking, I bet they're made out of cheap steel, right? The story is that I've seen is that reinforcing steel, for sure, it was in 2 English newspapers going back a few years now. I don't know if I can find the links right now, but I maybe should have been more prepared. But the Chinese steel manufacturers put boron in the steel, and it's to do with a tax break. Apparently, I didn't investigate all the details of the tax break, but it was reported that it was to do a tax break so they could sell the steel without getting certain tax penalties on the way to America. Right? They put boron in it to make it into a certain kind of alloy which had this tax break. And putting boron in the steel makes the welds more likely to crack. Engineering fact. And it makes it harder to weld. And I've heard that from another story. I heard someone else talking about it on a this is only hearsay, but on it was on a video on YouTube or something. I heard someone in the background saying, yeah, it makes it harder to weld and the welds crack. And I only heard that, just the last little thing caught my eye, and I did that research. And so that's what I know about it. I don't know for a fact that this inferior steel is being used in pipelines, but a lot of them are spitting. They always spit at the welds. Where else are they going to spit? They're not going to spit anywhere else apart from the weld. Right? And if the weld is weakened by this process, then that has been done knowingly, right, which is criminal. An act which is likely to injure your neighbour, done knowingly or intentionally, is criminal. The governments of the world are not above the law. They are subject to the law the same as anyone else. They are paid to enact the law, and an unlawful piece of legislation, which is not law, right? It's unlawful legislation. There's 2 kinds of legislation, right? You've got lawful legislation, which follows law, and you've got unlawful legislation, which doesn't. And 99% of the legislation made up these days is unlawful. It does not follow law. And the fact that the government are doing it criminally means the governments of the world are criminal. And guess what? It's unlawful to pay someone to commit crime, so it's unlawful to pay tax until the world's governments stop being criminal. I'm going over a bit of old ground. I'm going to carry on back to what I was reading just now, but you get the point, I hope, what I'm talking about. All that stuff is on my blog anyway. So the answer comes down to money. Why the engineers are not dismantling this unnecessary toxic network of poisonous or crude oil and gas over the countryside. This money it is fraudulently created. Well, fraud in law is pretending something is something which it's not, in order to gain financially or to make someone else lose financially. Well, fractional reserve banking, which is how they create this money, right, is pretending a piece of gold is 10 bits of gold when it's only 1 bit of gold. That is pretending something which is not. And lending those 10 pieces of paper out at interest, the banks are gaining and everybody else is losing at a quite extraordinary rate. Right, so it is fraudulently created, and fraud is a crime which is imprisonable, and the proceeds of crime are recoverable through the courts. So once we take over the courts, we can use lawful process to take all that money off the bankers, which they've created out of fraud, and put it in the public purse to be used for other purposes, like paying for a beautiful place to be made with the technology we've got, for example. It is fraudulently created, and virtual money, sitting in a computer earning compound interest on itself, which is of no real consequence whatsoever. Is the US Army Corps of Engineers afraid of millivolts of criminally created fraudulent electricity in a computer? Question mark. 1 billion veterans, including ancestors. So let's have a few of the shades and all the warriors who've fallen over the years, fighting for their country, for their honour, their dignity. Let's have them there at Standing Rock. Let's make a prayer for them to all turn up at Standing Rock and scare the living shit out of those security guards one night. 1 billion veterans, including ancestors, are not afraid. And nor are the tribes of hashtag Standing Rock and hashtag elsewhere. There is no real monetary reason why the US Army Corps of Engineers is not already engaged in a wholesale action of dismantling the entire deadly and criminal infrastructure of the corporate oil industry. Well, so okay, we keep the bits which are not deadly or criminal, which might be, we might need a bit of oil, something, we might need a bit of this and that and the other, but 99% of it can be made out of hemp with zero pollution. Last little note, written as normal under the influence of cannabis. True, guilty, lock me up. So, that's it really, that's what I wanted to say. I would love to have a Skype group of people who would like to discuss taking this further. I think in terms of some kind of radio theatre, that's my real desire to go forward in that way, is to produce radio theatre with a group Skype call. Hey, now o'clock, how you doing? Boo to you too. So, Nick without number I. Colleen?
Yes?
Would you help me to, I didn't ask you before, I'm asking you in public, so maybe it's not fair to ask, but would you be up for being part of a Skype call, a group Skype call to discuss a radio show?
Sure.
So, is anybody out there who would like to put a message in the chat room?
Okay. We'd have to have, if anyone wants to join in and discuss this as well, we will need your Skype information, your Skype ID, and we could add you to this.
Yeah.
So if anyone sends that to me, and
yes, we are, Nick. Without number, we're live. Yeah.
And I am Colleen, COLLEEN KELLY 917 on Skype.
How do we do that? We make another group on Skype.
Actually, I could right here just add them to this call, and it would create a group. For now, that would be the easiest thing to do. It would just add to this group here. As far as being a permanent group, I can create one.
Well, let's do a quick one now, and anybody who's interested. Well, I think Nick without number might be interested, but he can't hear us at the moment.
She, I think.
Nick, sorry. She.
Now remember, it takes about 2 minutes, because there's a slight lag between when we speak and it goes on to the player. So, looking to see if I have any new people. Are you creating a group?
No, I don't know how to do that.
I'm not sure I do either at this point, other than just add people to this.
To the HaggieShack room. So that other more people could talk on here.
Yeah, it would go right on to Skype.
Oh.
I mean, if that's what you wanted.
Yeah, that would create a Skype group somehow.
Yeah.
I don't understand how it works. But yeah. Nick's going somewhere. He said he might just come in a minute. This is really short notice.
Yeah, it is, but this is a test kind of thing to see what can be done.
Yeah.
So
how long before JP takes over?
JP, it took the stream about 13 minutes ago on Wolf Spirit Radio, but we are still on HaggieShack Live.
All right. Okay. Hi, Nick. Can you hear me? Can you hear us? So. Hey. Yeah. Thanks now. Now o'clock.
Now o'clock is in Australia.
All right.
Nick without number. I'm not sure where Nick without number is. Maybe Australia as well.
Nick, it's about, thanks now, Clock. Yeah. Nick, it's about, the easement, for the fracking, for the Standing Rock, Dapple, Dakota Access Pipeline.
And all the other pipelines that are going through, like gangbusters throughout the United States and elsewhere.
Absolutely, the whole infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Which is leaking everything. It's leaking oil and gas everywhere, in the water, on the land, and in the air. Right, it's leaking badly. And there's a man called Dr. Anthony Ingraffia. I keep on about him, but he's at forgot the name of it. Not Stanford. God, it's gone right out of my mind. He's a university lecturer anyway in fracture mechanics, rock fracture mechanics, and he was involved in the development of fracking and knows exactly where it all leaks, and has been doing surveys. Now o'clock. No, I don't. I want to do a theatre group, a radio theatre group, which is why I would like to get a Skype group together so that we can work up, improvise, rehearse a little bit, something, and then record it and broadcast it. That would be like a radio play with a point to it, have a little bit of drama, just a short little thing, 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes max, probably 10 minutes.
And do you have the link to your YouTube?
Yeah.
That you've done as well? They could kind of see, even though it's video, could be well transposed into radio.
Yeah.
Theater.
I mean, it's the words that count. It's only just me standing there in the theatre on my own without even a single prop.
Right.
So it is only the words. It doesn't matter about that.
I was thinking if we had the link to the one, or to your channel even, we could put that in the chat room as well.
It will be there in about half a
cool.
second. I just got it. I'm a bit slow. I'm not very organised. I should have all these links in a place where I can find them straight away, but I don't.
That's okay. We did this last minute.
So along the lines of that there, that's 13 minutes long, and that's a day in the life of a lumberjack. I put a new subtitle on it, which is, a day in the life of a professional soldier who's paid to abuse proactively peaceful protectors of life and property. Oh yeah, that's a point to raise. Protectors of life and property. Mm-hmm. What is the biggest threat to life and property on this planet right now? Well, there are two that I know of that are the most serious, and which one's more serious is the question. The two that I'm thinking of, the threat of world war, or the threat of environmental damage and destruction taken as a whole on this planet, not including carbon dioxide, because I think the carbon dioxide thing is unprovable, to say the least. I could go into that a little bit and explain myself. The increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has been around about 100 parts per million. From 280 to 380 parts per million, I think that's right, roughly. Depends where you measure it, it's quite a lot of variety in it, it's not exactly a fixed figure. Anyway, it's of the order of 100 parts per million. So that sounds, quite big, 100 parts per million, but how big is a million? And how does it compare to 100? Let's look on a scale of millimeters. 100 millimeters is about 4 inches long. How big is a million millimeters? Well, a million is 1,000 times 1,000. There's 1,000 millimeters in a meter. And 1,000 times that, 1,000 meters, is a kilometer. So a million millimeters is 1 kilometer. And the proportion of carbon dioxide increase in the atmosphere is 4 inches to 1 kilometer. Now, in my opinion, I wouldn't put my humble opinion, because I'm not very humble about it, in my shout it from the rooftops opinion, it's impossible to prove that a 4 inches out of 1 kilometer proportion of an inert gas, practically inert gas, which is essential to all life on the planet. It's essential to plants, therefore it's essential to animals. Without carbon dioxide, it's only a 0.03% of it in the atmosphere, or 0.05% now, 0.02% increase. That is 4 inches out of 1 kilometre. And they're saying they can prove it's causing this or that or the other. Global cooling, global warming, climate change, call it what you like. I don't believe anyone can realistically prove that 4 inches to 1 kilometre proportion is causing. You might as well try and prove that an earthworm built the Great Pyramid. Right, that's my opinion. And as far as I'm concerned, there are 97% of global climate, whatever kind of scientists they are supposed to be, are claiming that an earthworm built the Great Pyramid. That's how I see it. It's a bloody joke, and it's a sick joke, because it's going to bring the entire environmental movement into disrepute. I don't know what Trump's going to do. I knew he was going to get rid of the climate argument, and he's done it, and I'm not displeased about that. It's time it went a long time ago. It's a complete fraud. Misled a whole generation of protesters into protesting about something which can't be proven. And the fact it can't be proven is illustrated perfectly by the fact that it's been going on for 40 years and they still haven't proven it. Anyway, climate change. Yeah. So that is the threat of environmental damage, not including climate change. Which is more serious? The threat of environmental damage, not including not including carbon dioxide, because there are other things causing climate change, which undoubtedly is changing. The sun, mostly, and cosmic rays. It's been proven by CERN. If you look on the CERN website and go CERN Cloud, CERN, which is the biggest scientific experiment on the planet, it's that great big particle collider thing. They can make cosmic rays there, and they push them through atmosphere and watch cloud dust form in the air, and those particles of dust are essential for the formation of clouds. A droplet of water cannot condense on its own. It has to condense onto an aerosol, and these aerosols are formed when cosmic radiation hits the atmosphere. And the cosmic radiation varies with the magnetic field of the sun, which goes on an 11-year cycle, and it also varies on what's ever going on in the universe around us, which is causing cosmic radiation to hit us, which could be an exploding star or various other things going on. So that's what basically is the variation in cosmic radiation hitting the atmosphere, leading to variation in clouds, which are the most potent form of climate change, proven in the geological record going back millions and billions of years. I'll put a link to that as well right now. There it is. This is the link to the original guy who did the research. That's Hans Svensmark, who did the original research, and he was the one that found out that these particles are what cause climate change. So again, going back to it, which is more serious, the threat of environmental damage or the threat of world war? It's a hard question to answer. And the reason it's hard to answer is for two reasons. One is because they're like chalk and cheese. They're very different to each other. And the other reason that I know of is that they are of a similar magnitude. If one was more serious, much more serious than the other, everybody would say, well, obviously that one is, or the other one is. But they don't. Some people say environmental damage is the most serious threat, and some people say, well, obviously, don't be stupid, it's the threat of world war. But it's a hard, tough question to answer. But the second reason why it's tough, they are of a similar magnitude, means, logically speaking, that certainly in the public perception at least, the threat of environmental damage and destruction on this planet is of a similar magnitude to a threat of world war. Similar magnitude, different quality of threat altogether. So the remedy would be of a similar magnitude, but of different quality altogether. The remedy would be a state of emergency for the environment. That's what you do when you have a war. You have a state of emergency. Everybody's working together. All the people are working. They're feeding the army. Off they go to war, kill each other, come back home if what's left of them. And all the most bravest people have been killed by whoever organised that war on both sides. Obviously, the people who organised it aren't involved in the war themselves, and they stand back and watch while everybody else kills each other. So, the threat of environmental damage is as serious as the threat of world war, and it should, in magnitude at least, be treated as such. We should have a global state of emergency for permaculture, in my opinion. Permaculture being to use all our wonderful technologies, resources, skills, labour force, to create a beautiful place for ourselves on this planet for future generations. Which, going back to the original statement, that's the reason. If you watch the video of what's her name? It's Standing Rock Part 1. Hold on, where is it? This is an amazing piece of film. If anybody hasn't seen it, it's not available. Can't be. It was available last night because I watched it. Yeah. Check this out. Watch this in a little while. This piece of film, it's a story of Standing Rock, and the Indians, what's happened to them. But, I was watching it and I made some notes. So, at the beginning of the video, that's not I made a lot more notes than that. They're on my laptop, that's why. I know, I've got enough. At the beginning of the film, LaDonna, who is the owner of the property of the original site at Standing Rock, she says in the film that the central justification for continuing with DAPL was financial. That the oil companies, the pipeline companies had spent so much money on it that this fact was good enough for them to proceed, that they might lose all that money they've spent. So the entire reason, the really main justification that they put forward was that they spent so much money on it, so they couldn't stop. Now, we know it's virtual money, and it was created by criminal fraud. So there is no financial reason whatsoever. That's why that's where the inspiration for that part of the statement came from. Oh yes, and there's another point there. I'll just put my note into the link, into the chat room. It's so easy, isn't it? God, I've done this before. What have I done for you? Right, so LaDonna just said in the film, central justification, blah, blah, blah. There is no essential reason. And in contract law, at the bottom there, It says, any contract to commit crime is void and unenforceable. Well, injuring your neighbour knowingly is crime. The entire oil infrastructure and gas infrastructure, petrochemical infrastructure is injuring people on a phenomenal scale. Unbelievable. Has anyone seen the network of pipelines all over America and then looked at the network of rivers all over America and put the two together? And it's like, I'm not going to say any more than that.
Definitely shows there's a purpose.
Right, next part of the film, she says that where's my... I know what I did. I went to bed and I took my laptop and carried on making these notes. I've got more notes on my laptop. I'll see if I can get it out. Hold on. I'll just put this bit as well. Right, it was 300 odd sacred sites. Now, I'm not sure whether that's the entire length of the pipeline or just the bit on Standing Rock or Sioux territory. But it was well over 300, might have been nearly 400 sacred Indian sites would be destroyed by this DAPL, this pipeline. Now, I would be interested, I haven't done it, and I haven't got the resources really, I could probably do it, but to find a map of that pipeline and have another map with all the sites on it. And let's just see. I wonder if that pipeline is like a ley line going through as many sites as possible. Now, I don't know. That was the immediate thought came into my head. I wonder if they've deliberately, it would be fairly obvious to see with that map, whether they've deliberately targeted. How easy would it be around to go, how easy would it be for that pipeline to just miss them sites instead of hitting 360 or something of them, right? Now, if we can just show on a map that it's obvious that they've gone through those sites, as many as possible, then that shows without shadow of doubt that the people responsible for DAPL have got a criminal mentality. No question. Right? So, if it's only the bit of Sioux territory, it's only like a few miles of Sioux territory, it's going through 300 damn sites. And they're not that big, those sites. They're not like fucking huge great things, hundreds of miles. They've moved it 20 miles, how many miles from that, going near that town with that protest, onto Indian territory, so they could move it another bit either way. It doesn't have to go through them sites. I would like to see how many of those sites it had to go through, right? Because I think that would be important to find out, because that would be very powerful evidence in the public eye. And the last little note is very upsetting, but it's the young girl who was really the first one who started the runs, which started it all off. She says about the culture of rape on the Indian reservations of young children. And she describes her experiences from the age of 6. And that she's overcome drugs and alcohol. She's got a child and the father of a child, and they're together. Don't know much more about her. She seems happy. I've seen her on videos crying her eyes out because, please come, we need you. The police are attacking us with peppers and, I know you've all got drug habits and please leave the bottle and come. And they came in their thousands and tens of thousands, and they came because that girl. Anyway, she says that rape comes from boarding schools. Now, if you go back into Indian history, tens of hundreds of thousands of them were ripped away from their families, children, and put in boarding schools, institutional boarding schools. And in that video that I put the link to, the Viceland video, which is the part 1 of Sacred Walk, Standing Rock, I'll put it again because it's really important. That one. If you watch that, there's a little clip of little Indian children with all their hair cut the same, standing like a choir, singing. One little Indian got killed by a cowboy. They're Indian children singing in little sing-song little children voices about themselves getting killed. Anyway, So these boarding schools, and we know now it's already being exposed, what goes on in boarding schools with little children. They've gone through that. And she then explains that, or another part of the film is one of the other girls, I think, explaining, might be her, I can't remember, explaining how, when these, pipeline companies come to an area, they build a little town out of prefabs, and, the native children, young children, are being snatched off the street and passed around, sold from one worker to another. Right? And that's going on. And there's no doubt, you can see it in the kids' faces when they're talking about it. These are the young kids that went on the run, that started Standing Rock protest. I had no idea about this. I'm in bits at the moment. I can't even talk about it.
Well, there's also, this happened up in Canada as well.
Everywhere.
And, yeah, everywhere. Canada has, well, recently, I'll say within the last several years, talked about the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children that were murdered in these private boarding schools run by churches.
In Scotland, where Prince Charles went to school, they found hundreds of skeletons, children on the Channel Islands. They found hundreds of skeletons in the bases of boarding schools, children's centres. Yeah,
right.
Same. It's everywhere.
Canada as well.
And the Zionists have been thrown out of 100 and something different countries in the world, and a lot of the reason is through child sacrifice. You know that, Colleen. You know about that.
Right. And there's also reports that the Queen, a couple years ago, went to Canada, took several Native American children with her, and they've never been heard from since then. Yeah. She and Prince Charles, I believe it was.
Edward Heath used to go in his yacht Morning Cloud from the Channel Islands with children, and quite often they didn't come back. I mean, if a child is not cognizant of what is happening and who's doing it, then as soon as it's happened, they're a risk. They're going to be got rid of. They're expendable. They're taken out of social services. They go missing hundreds of thousands everywhere. Mm-hmm. And this has been going on. Now, we need to straighten something else about here between Britain and America here right now, because I feel a lot of people blaming each other for their respective foreign policy. Mm. Well, we know that AIPAC rules American foreign policy without a doubt. Let's go back to the Russian Revolution for a minute. Communism, right, broadly speaking, means pretty much you think everybody's got to be equal. Am I right in saying that, Colin? There's a very simple statement. It's oversimplified, but just to keep it simple, everybody's got to be equal. Is that right? Communism.
Yes, as far as I understand it.
Right, me too. So, if someone comes along and says, right, everybody's got to be equal, I for one, and you probably, Colin, as well, are going to say, no, we're all different. Right? Nobody can be equal to anybody. We're all different to each other. Right? It doesn't mean better or worse, but we are different. We're not equal. So as soon as somebody comes along and says everybody's got to be equal, and somebody else says no, then if you're going to have equality, you've got to have someone to impose it. So there you've got the imposers and the imposed upon. So where's equality gone? And you can guarantee someone's going to say no. So you have to have that imposition. So there isn't equality. It cannot possibly work. It's a logical impossibility. I don't know, there's probably a word for that, but I don't know what it is. It cannot work, right? So communism was actually invented by the Eastern European false Jews who took the Torah and perverted it for their own ends, so they could lend money and become very wealthy. It seems that seems to be their game plan. They tied up with the Rothschilds of the same descent, same clan, if you like. Rothschilds were getting very wealthy through their fractional reserve banking fraud. Very, very wealthy on an exponential basis, magnifying their wealth 1,000-fold every 10 years. That's how I work it out, roughly speaking, which is after 20 years, you've got 1 million, after 30 years, you've got 1,000 million, after 40 years, you've got 1 million times 1 million. I'm going a bit fast over these figures, but 1 million times 1 million, after 40 years, that's 39,000 years worth of seconds. That's how big 1 million times 1 million is. Or 1,000 kilometers of millimeters. No, 1 million kilometers. Is it? Kilometer is 1 million. So 1 million kilometres. That's a billion. 1 million times 1 million. An English billion. Anyway, it's a huge, huge number. That's by doubling your money each year, which is what fractional reserve banking does. You can reach astronomical levels of wealth very quickly, and that's exactly what they did. So they wanted to open a bank in Russia, and the Russian Tsar knew what they were up to. I mean, basically the Khazars, right, in Eastern Europe, the Khazar was a mercenary king and had a tribe, a nomadic tribe, it seems. This is the best of my knowledge. And they would agree to fight anybody's war on the understanding they could rape and pillage afterwards. They weren't interested in anything else. They didn't need paying or anything, just, we'll fight your war as long as we can rape and pillage. And that's what they do. And if there's no wars going on, they're out of business. So, you know, the king of the Khazars would send an agent to another foreign king and say, well, that king over there fucked your daughter, excuse my language, and a reciprocal note to the other king, and before you know it, they've got a war on their hands, and the king of the Khazars is quite happy fighting either one or the other, both sides, or even maybe both sides. Right? And that's what they were up to. And the Tsar of Russia knew that. Right? And that's why they had to leave Eastern Europe, because the Eastern Europeans, the Russians and the native, you know, whoever else was around there, decided they had to go, you know. They're lucky they didn't kill them all, but they ended up in Israel. And that's the origin of the false Jews, which Jesus talked about and threw out of the temple in his only fit of temper. He threw the money changers out. That's who they were, I think. That's who they were. And their descendants are the Rothschilds. And they wanted to open a bank in Russia, and the Tsar of Russia said, no, get out of here, you double dealing, whatever he called them. And they said, we'll get you. And they invented communism for the purpose that it caused, in the same way as ISIS and ISIL and that are causing dissent in the Middle East. Communist cells caused dissent in Russia. Communist revolution happened. How many million? 20 million Russians died in that? I mean, that was caused by Jews, right? False Jews. That's another point about getting called anti-Semitic for criticising Jews. They're not Semites. Less than 5% of the world's people that call themselves Jews in the world are Semites. Most of them are Eastern European. And I would like to actually know what's the proportion of Semitic to Ashkenazi Jews that were killed in the concentration camps, the small number that were killed. What proportion of them were Semites? Because I bet most of them were Semites, because I'll bet you that Ashkenazi were just getting rid of some of the last few. Because they don't want to be called out on this thing, this anti-Semitism thing, you know. Well, it's too late now, the internet's happened. That's one thing they didn't plan in the protocols of Zion, they didn't plan the internet. Anyway, so they were told to leave Russia. They caused the communist revolution, and they populated the original Politburo of the Communist Party in Russia. That Politburo was over 90% Polish Jews, and they had less than 2% population. So is that in any way representation of the people, for the people, by the people? It's supposed to be communism. What's supposed to be is in its essence. Let's make it fair for everybody. Well, fairness we can't have equality. We can have equity, which is fairness, but we can't have equality. It's a big distinction, very important word, equity. It's the highest principle of law as well, as it goes. Anyway, so they have this allegedly Russian Communist Party, totally ruling the Russian media with a fist of iron. Not a word got spoken, or a word written or spoken or watched on telly, in a film, in a book, which was not controlled by them and was largely dedicated to telling the Russian people that the West is full of evil, capitalist monsters. At the exact same time, in America, the American media, also owned by a different branch of the same family, the Jews, right? They proudly own the American media and have done for some time, was also consistently telling the American people that Russia is full of evil communist monsters. And since that time, honest, courageous, brave men and women of the armed forces and intelligence services have been either directly killing each other or torturing each other to death for secrets over a war caused by these bastards. Excuse my language, Colin, I'm sorry, I can't sometimes help myself.
It doesn't bother me.
No words to describe these people. Right? They have been responsible. Look, they own every national bank in the world apart from 3. So what does a country do that has to go to war? So they own also, through their 6 media corporations, they own all the media. So apart from any Arab countries, right? who don't charge interest on the loans, which seems to be, from both religions, Jewish and Arabic and Christianity, all coming from the same original root, except one of them has got a disease that's in it. And the disease is usury. Right? And Christian, we're subject to it as well. In fact, we've been in this country, in England, right, we've been in the UK, we've been subject to Jewish economic slavery since the time of Napoleon. And it was Jewish economic slaves who fought on the British side of the War of Independence. The common enemy is the Jews, and they've got us blaming each other. Now, we've got to get over that. That's what I said, and just a little while ago I said we have to have a bit of an understanding between UK and America, and we need to really get together. Not only just us, but particularly us. We have a special relationship. I'm not talking about the political bullshit either. I mean, I feel something equally strong for Russia, to be honest, and I feel this little country, for better or worse, it's got the most commonly spoken language on the planet. And British law is so simple. Not legislation. I'm not talking about legislation, but if we know the difference between lawful and legal. I've got a video about that. It's quite simple. Alright, example. It's illegal to break a person's front door down in normal circumstances. But say if a house is on fire and there's someone inside and you need to break the door down to get them out, that would be a lawful act. Right? So what is lawful always trumps Trump. But what is lawful always trumps what is legal. So all these executive orders that he makes, right? They're not lawful. They're unlawful. And the principles of law, I'm going to just 1 second. I'm just going to. This is a video I made about legal versus lawful. And I also wrote something the other day about these presidential orders. Where did I put that? It's in there somewhere. Executive presidential orders. This is a case in point about legal and lawful. Executive presidential orders. Executive presidential orders, like everything else in an intelligent and informed population. I'm not saying anyone's not intelligent, but people are certainly not informed due to the media, owned by the same people that are financing and instigating both sides of it all. Oh yeah, that's what I was saying about they own the media, so they own the media in the different countries, they incite a war, they finance. If they own every national bank in the world apart from 3, which allegedly they do, and the means of how they did it is fractional reserve banking fraud, by magnifying their wealth through fraud, by doubling it every week, every year, doubling it every year. Forgot what. Colin, rescue me, I've lost myself. What was I just saying?
Okay, you were talking about the rule of law, unlawful legislation, presidential orders, or even presidential memorandums.
I was saying it's a lawful act to kick someone's door down, houses on fire to get someone out, but it's illegal to kick a door down. A piece of legislation is what makes something legal or not. Lawful is what's reasonable in the circumstance. Okay? Another example of that, say in America you have guns, not everybody has a gun, but you have a right to bear arms, I think, as far as I'm understanding it. So, say we're in the street, right, and you and me, Colleen, for example, in the street, and someone on the other side of the street starts off with a gun and starts shooting people. Heaven forbid it ever happened, but if it did, and say, example, I had a gun in my pocket and a license to use it, I'd get it out and I'd shoot that person and stop them. I wouldn't necessarily kill them first shot, but if they fall over and then start going for their gun, they're going to get stopped properly. And that would be a lawful act, right? I couldn't just get my gun out in the street and shoot somebody normally. It's illegal to do that. but it's lawful to do it in that circumstance. Take it a stage further, right? The person on the other side of the street going off with a gun and shooting people is my twin, right? And I can't shoot the geezer, or my twin sister maybe could be, I don't know, someone, I can't shoot them anyway for whatever reason. I can't. Might be my dad is shooting people. I can't shoot my dad. So you, Colleen, you're standing next to me. The next person my dad's going to shoot is your kid, right? You're an expert in kung fu. You know I've got the gun in my pocket. You know I'm not going to shoot him. What are you going to do? Right? You're going to use your kung fu skills and kick me in the head using reasonable force. Like I said, what is lawful in the circumstances, what's reasonable. You're not going to kill me with the kick in the head because we're friends, right? Even though I'm not going to shoot him, right? You kick me in the head using reasonable force. You take the gun off me and shoot him yourself, right? Now, if someone had done that, that would be a lawful act, right? If I went out in the street now and did exactly the same thing, which is knock someone on the head, steal a gun and shoot somebody in a public place, that would be assault and battery and theft of a firearm, unlawful possession and use, endangering public life, discharging a weapon in a public place, and murder, and I've spent at least 30 years in prison. So now you know the difference between legal and lawful. You don't need any textbooks. You can explain it to any 10-year-old child, and it will stand up in any high court in the world. Right, so executive presidential orders, like everything else in an intelligent and informed population, you're informed now, right? An intelligent and informed population are subject to the rules of common law and equity. I'll explain the difference between common law and equity in a second. An unlawful executive presidential order is unenforceable. Like any contract to commit crime is unenforceable. The mortgage contract is forcing millions of working people to go to work, engaged in this petrochemical industry and everything else, destroying the planet, injuring themselves, their family, their neighbour, knowingly, which is criminal. The mortgage contract is forcing people to do that. It's an unenforceable contract. All those houses that have been repossessed, it's an unenforceable contract. I've been saying this for 38 years and no one's listening. I don't know why, but I'm hoping some people are going to start listening soon. Sorry, I'm not watching the chat room. I don't know if I'm being rude. So an unlawful executive presidential order is unenforceable. This statement is true for the simple reason that an informed and intelligent populace, including the rank and file of the armed forces, the police and intelligence services, will not uphold or enforce any unlawful executive presidential order. Right? The president is there, the same as any government, to enact the law. He is not there to take the law into his own hands. He cannot do that in an intelligent and informed society. The urgent thing we need to do is to inform and empower the entire population as to the true nature of law. Then we'll have the police and the armed forces and they're not stupid. Right? Watch my lumberjack story and see how stupid they are. We're not all entirely stupid, sir. It's the last line of it, spoken by an inspector in the police station. Anyway, well, obviously now you know this. Any normal 10-year-old child can understand the information which is required to be made public in order to inform and empower the intelligent populace, to the point where they will not tolerate or uphold any unlawful executive presidential order. So if we want to stop these unlawful presidential orders, just inform people what the law is. And I think the best way to do that is through theatre, which again, coming back to it, is why I want to start a radio theatre company. No, an hour clock, it doesn't require lawyers, right? They don't talk about law, they talk about legislation. If you talk to a lawyer or a barrister or a judge about what I just told you, they will look terrified. The simple reason that it will put them out of business. The reason it will put them out of business is twofold. One is, it's so simple, we don't need lawyers, right? I can stand up in any court of law, so can anyone else, and show what is reasonable. You can show, with logic, that reasonable behaviour is not criminal. How simple is that? To be precise, reasonable, prudent, and well-intentioned behaviour is not criminal, despite any act of parliament, or legislation, or Congress, or any other government, whatever they choose to call it. It is an unlawful legislation. You cannot have unlawful legislation. Well, you can, and it is happening, but with people who know the simple nature of the law, it will be stopped. And that's what the internet's for. Right? We can stop it. We can stop it dead. The police oath in this country, right, it's not the same in America, but it's similar. And I'll tell you what it is in this country. What it was, they've changed it in this country. They've made it more complicated. They've taken certain words out and changed it around, but it is simply enough. Protect life and property and uphold the law. Okay? I was told this by a police officer on a road protest years ago, back in the 90s, on Twyford Down, where we were protesting against the road being built to carry yet more cars across the countryside. No, further while they're not. They are paid to uphold the law. And if they're upholding a fraudulent creed, then they're upholding fraud, and it means they're out of business. Again, that's the other reason why they're going to go out of business, because of what I'm saying, because they will not be in a job. They've shown themselves to be party to economic slavery, wars, genocides, God knows what. We don't need to complicate ourselves with talking about the Queen. All we've got to do is make this information public. That's all we need to do. The police oath is to protect life and property and uphold the law. We've established, I think, that the threat, no, we didn't. The threat of environmental damage or the threat of world war, which was more serious. Well, of the two, if they're of a similar magnitude, the threat of environmental damage is a real and present threat, and the latest manifestation of that is fracking and the extra pipelines everywhere. Right? It's a real and present threat. So of the two, if they're of a similar magnitude, I would say the one that needs to be dealt with right now is the threat of environmental damage globally. Right? So, lost myself again.
We're still talking about law.
Yeah. There's so many convoluted bits of it. It's all simple. Do you get me? Nothing I've said, if it was organised properly into some lessons or some stories, is there anything I've said which a 10-year-old can't understand? A normally intelligent 10-year-old child. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's not, is there? And it would stand up in any high court with, if the people knew the information first. That's the proviso, right? I could stand up in any court and they'll lock me up, take me away, delegate me, decide I'm insane or whatever, get rid of me one way or another. They do it to lots of people. And I'm honestly, I'm surprised I haven't gone already, but I had a choice years ago, either I'm going to speak about this or face a bullet, so I thought, well, I can't keep quiet about it, so I'm kind of expecting one any time, but I'm not worried about it. When my dad died, I'll just say this, right, when my dad died, he came to me in a dream that night, and I hadn't spoken to him for about a couple of weeks. He died of cancer, and he came to me in a dream in his sailing boat, which he loved his boat. I was conceived on that sailing boat. Right? He came to me in this dream, in space, sailing his boat straight towards the sun. And when the sun goes down on the sea, and it all shines, it's all shiny, the sea. Right? And his boat was sailing on that sunlight towards the sun, and the sea was actually made out of sunlight. And he was sailing that boat, and he had his hand on the tiller, and he had the most beautiful, happiest smile on his life. I've never seen him like that. He was a very strict man, my dad. He was in the Navy. His dad was in the Navy. In the Navy, you do what you're told, when you're told. You don't ask questions. You have to be like that on a ship. It has to run like clockwork. There's no room for committee decisions on a ship at sea, especially a sailing ship. Right? Everybody's got to work together. It's the ultimate fascist dictatorship on a sailing ship, which is why I'm not anti-fascist. But you can have a happy ship or you can have a miserable ship, and that depends on the relationship between the skipper and the crew. And the skipper on a sailing ship has to learn the ropes. That's where that expression comes from. You can't just jump onto a sailing ship without knowing the ropes. And there's only one way to know the ropes on a sailing ship. I could start going off into all sorts of tangents here, Haggie, about masons and apprenticeships and how it's been corrupted. But I've done it again. I've lost myself where I was.
Okay, you were talking about the dream that you had of your father sailing towards the light, towards the sun. And
I know there's life after death, because that night he died. I phoned up my uncle, right, the next morning, and I said, Dad died last night, didn't he? And he said, how do you know that? You haven't spoken to him. And I said, I know because I had this dream. I told him a dream. He said, yeah, you're right. He did. So I know that dream was like Technicolor. It was absolutely the most real, beautiful, alive dream I think I've ever had in my life. And I've had quite a few mad dreams, different times. But he gave me the most amazing. And when he was alive, he wouldn't even contemplate anything. He couldn't measure with his ruler. He had a wooden ruler, one of those fold-out ones in 4 parts. You can open them up, they've got hinges in them.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them used to rap me on the knuckles with it. If you couldn't measure it with that, it didn't exist, right? And he would not contemplate anything else. God, spirituality, I started smoking a bit of weed and started with all these theories about this and that. He wasn't interested. Anyway, my mum and dad split up when I was about 4, and I always wanted to get on with him, but I never did. I'd be with him for that. I'd almost run away from my mum to go and see him. And get there within half an hour having a big argument, nearly killing each other. I was only 4, 5, 6, 10, that sort of age. And all my life I tried to, and the last 5 years before he died, I don't know why I'm going into. Is this alright to talk about this?
It sure is. It's your show, dude.
Okay. Well, it's just really to prove the point that there's life after death. So when I was talking about taking a bullet, right? I'm not worried.
Right.
I've met people in the House of Lords, right? And, I met 2 in one day. And I told them both this stuff about the law, about the Prana principle. I told you about the Prana principle, haven't I, Haggie?
Yes, you did,
But I told them all about this, both of them, these 2 guys, right? One really liked it and one hated me. The other one would have shot me on sight. And I could see it, and he couldn't do it as a public place. He didn't have a gun on him. He was a shooter. He's an old man. He's probably been in 2 wars, shot loads of people, or told people to shoot people. He's one of them. Ultra right wing, very wealthy people I was talking to at the time. I was only talking to them because my mum got a horse, and at the Batham West Riding Club, which is a fairly well-to-do riding club. She wasn't well-to-do, but she got a decent horse, and she was good at it, so she got in that way. And I was there opening and closing the doors on the big sheds in the middle of the winter when they're going in and out of the rink to practice show jumping and dressage and stuff like that. So I'd be at the door, letting them come in and out. They'd be outside tacking up and that with their horse boxes. And to keep it a little bit warm inside, I'd be opening and closing the door. That's my job. And my mum said to me, please don't talk to anyone. I couldn't resist it. And I talked to these guys. One of them hated it and the other one loved it. And a couple of weeks later, the one who loved it came up to me. Oh no, before, yeah, the guy who hated it, I was quite enjoyed. I was torturing him a bit. I was rubbing it in a bit. And I said to him at the end, I said, I can see by your eyes you'd like to shoot me, wouldn't you? And he didn't say a word. I said, you're welcome. I said, but I'll tell you what, if you do, I'll come back and haunt you. You will never sleep again, I promise you. He turned around on his heel and walked off, right? He couldn't handle it at all. Right? Anyway, so, I mean it, I will. Right? So, maybe that's why they haven't shot me, because I could make a proper nightmare, I'll tell you what. So don't worry, guys, there is life after death, but, I wouldn't have made all that up. I couldn't make it up. I couldn't make that up. But it's a little story.
Yeah, a lot of people are afraid of death. And the only way you get out of this life is through death of the body, because the rest of you lives on and comes back again. That's my thoughts about it all. And I think that's also, what a lot of these warriors, even though many of them don't want to be called warriors, out at Standing Rock. A lot of people think that a warrior is about war. Well, a true warrior is not about war, but really about peace.
Best ones are jesters.
And,
best warriors.
Yeah. So these guys are like, what can they do? They can kill me, but I'll be back. I'll be part of the next generation fighting the same battle, trying to protect our land, our water, our earth, our children. Because it's all about the children. It's about the next generations. If there are no next generations, then all of life stops.
And if there's no water, there's no generations.
Mm-hmm.
That prophecy where it says, only when the last tree's been felled, the last banana's been eaten, will people realise they can't eat money?
Mm-hmm. The last drop of water is gone.
That's it. That one.
Yeah.
What about eating virtual money? Even if it was paper, you might get a bit of nutrition out of it. A little bit. But virtual money?
Well, when you
try eating virtual money.
Well, maybe if it was made out of hemp, it'd be all right.
Yeah, but that's not virtual then, is it? It's real.
Well, right.
You know what I mean? Try eating millivolts of electricity in a computer.
Well, I suppose we can. Not out of the computer, because it's probably been dirtied. But I was thinking, with that prophecy, that could be why they're trying to kill all the trees and poison all the water.
I have a conspiracy theorist attitude towards this poisoning of the water. I think it's an intentional act. The oil's running out, and they're using the last bit of oil to poison all the water, so there's none left, so the price rockets up, and they're going to use that as the next means of control.
Well, yeah, T-Boone, I keep calling him T-Bone, T-Boone's Pickens said, I'm wanting to say it was like back in the 90s, that water is the new oil.
Yeah.
And I knew then, hold on to your asses.
Yeah.
Because they found a way to charge for water, make you have to buy it, aside from also having to pay your water bill into your house. And they're working on the same thing with air. Because people, well, at least, we'll be able to breathe. Look at China where they had to wear masks. And a lot of people are carrying around tanks to be able to breathe oxygen. They're trying they're going to do the same thing with that. We got to stop this somehow, somewhere. I'm not one of those who wants to have to drink recycled urine through some suit that I have to wear.
It's supposed to be good for you, isn't it? Drinking your urine.
Well, they say that. However, I'm still at that yuck stage.
Yeah, me too.
Like, no. So, the Dune movie's the one that kind of put that in my head, and I'm like, ugh. But, yeah, any resources that they can get their hands on and get control over. And, and that includes, humanity, as we've seen throughout history. And even today still.
There's a film, another documentary called Nutricide. A woman made it. Dr. Rima Labo. I don't know if you've heard of her.
It's not coming to mind, but that doesn't mean anything. I've watched lots and lots of stuff over the last 6 years. Nutricide, you said?
Yeah.
Nutricide?
I see. Nutricide. I've got it. I've got the link to it. I'll just post it.
Okay.
Something else has happened.
Is it raining?
Yeah, there it goes. It's addressed to Narraclop by mistake, but we'll say it to everybody. It's a video called Nutricide.
Is it raining there?
Is it raining here? No. Oh, no, that's my kettle. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Is that all right? Is that really bad interference?
Well, I think you must have to bend over or move towards maybe another machine, your loud computer, from time to time when you're getting links and information. Because when you do that, it gets really, really loud.
Oh. Yeah.
Does your microphone's on your headset, possibly?
No, it's standing still halfway between me and my keyboard. So when I lean forward to do something with the keyboard, that's why it's going louder. I'll try and not do that. Is it a reasonable volume now?
It's reasonable now, yes.
Okay. I'll try and keep this distance. Keep my distance.
I thought you were by an airport or something there for a while.
No, yeah, taking off.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah, what's the opposite of gravity? Talking about taking off.
The opposite of gravity?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You'll kick yourself when I tell you. Anyone, what's the opposite of gravity in the chat box? What's the opposite of gravity?
Give him a few minutes. The opposite of gravity. For a free Shungite sticker.
You'll kick yourself.
Well, it's going to be difficult. I got my feet in my lap, so.
It's a one-word answer. You'll still kick yourself.
Propulsion?
No.
No.
It ends in ITY, the same as gravity does, right? That's a clue. That's all you get.
Nick without number is saying, for the mic setting in Skype, make sure the automatic adjustment is off.
Oh, okay.
See if that helps.
Is this a Skype call then now?
Yes. You and I are on Skype and it's going through my stream.
Oh, interesting. Oh, okay. I'll turn that thing off. Whatever it was. Volume.
Yeah, if you go up into the tools.
No, I've got it.
Okay. Yeah, because it plays havoc.
Allow Skype to automatically adjust my mixer levels.
Falling upwards.
No. No more will it happen.
All right.
Thank you. Good one. Falling upwards. Yeah. Well, no, it ends in ITY. Ends in, same as gravity. Same ending as gravity. ITY. There's going to be some sore people with arses around here in a minute. Shall I tell you? I'll wait a bit longer. Very close. Very close. It ends in ITY. Not levitate.
Levity.
That's the one. Levitate, well, gravitate would be the opposite of gravity, of levitate. Gravitate, levitate. Levity, gravity. The gravity of the situation.
Yeah, that did come to mind.
Yeah, well, that's it. So, on that basis, if we get happy enough, maybe we can take off.
Like the...
Like the kettle.
Well, and like the, llamas who levitated
levitated
through laughter. The laughing...
It's just joy, I don't know. Yeah, maybe
the laughing Buddha.
Yeah. I've got, this is something interesting about the English language again. It's so magic. How is it the most commonly spoken language on the planet? I mean, the tiny little number of people on this island could not, in my opinion, have forced it to happen. They couldn't have forced, how could they force everybody else on the planet to learn this language? I don't think that's possible, is it?
Well, if, like, they went over and conquered everybody and said, well, we own your land now and you have to speak our language. I mean, that has happened.
We captured other people and they would be in our army. Pirates would do that as well, right? The British Navy was all international. It wasn't just English people. It couldn't be. This country's always been a seaport, so there's always been lots of people coming in and out. I don't think there's any such thing as a British race, really. It's a bit of an anomaly. We're multicultural from going back, way back. We've got,
right.
Irish, Saxon, Northern, Celtic, French, German, all these different things. And who knows, with the the Kon-Tiki, there's connection between America and back then, so we've probably got Mexican and Indian blood, all kinds of different blood here. It's never been like, it's the British people, it's not the same as the American people. Look at the similarities between our countries, right? And look how we've been played against each other. Same as Russia. Putin, I think Putin's a decent bloke. I've always felt that. I've felt a deep honesty about him. I think Trump is an honest bloke as well. Don't quite know where he's coming from. I think he's honest. Not sure. We'll find out in the next few weeks. Let's see what happens. If I can get this message out about initiating a response from the Royal Corps of Army Engineers, as long as it's not a fast-moving bullet, right? But a written response.
Written response.
About why they are not dismantling the entire poisonous edifice of the petrochemical. They've only got one reason. It's financial reason. It's not for engineering reasons. They can do it. Physically speaking, they could do it tomorrow morning. They could take it all apart safely. Right? and there'd be a lot of work to do that. Much more work and, more satisfying work to turn all that countryside back and get rid of all those pipelines and all those oil wells. We don't need them. Right? We do that starting tomorrow morning. Money, no object. It's virtual money, remember? And we're having a state of emergency, which is now. It's not waiting for 20 years while they discuss whether carbon dioxide is causing global warming or not.
Well, and they're going to stop discussing that too, at least.
Well, good.
Well.
Fine. It's the most ridiculous argument ever. How many people have fallen for it? Colleen, with due respect, a 4-inch to 1 kilometre proportion, right, of the atmosphere is what is alleged to be causing climate change. When there's clouds up there, right, you know what happens when the clouds come across the sun. They cool it down. And they are caused not by carbon dioxide. They're caused by cosmic radiation. It's been proven. There's a massive experiment at CERN, the particle accelerator in Switzerland, that 23-mile underground tunnel full of electromagnets, right, to accelerate particles against each other. They're doing an experiment on the basis of this man Svensmark's work. I posted the videos earlier, right, where he proved, to my satisfaction, using simple logic reasoned argument and a few illustrations, which have not been refuted, any of them, right, that climate change was caused by clouds, and that clouds was caused by the relative intensity of cosmic radiation striking the atmosphere, which causes these little particles upon which clouds will form.
Well, what part do chemtrail clouds have to play in all that?
I've no idea about chemtrails. I haven't got involved in them. To me, it's another issue which I can't prove. Right? With my carpenter's ruler, I can't prove about chemtrails. I don't have the resources. But I can look at the alleged increase of carbon dioxide and I can say, well, you can't prove that. I can't say whether carbon dioxide is or is not causing anything. Right? If I'm saying that you can't prove that it is with that proportion, 4 inches to a kilometre, it's ridiculous. And I can't understand how so many university-educated people, with due respect, have fallen for that argument. It beggars belief. It staggers me, to be honest. And they don't teach people to think. It just proves one thing. It just proves that they don't teach people to think in school. If they did, they would never have got this far with this. But, and that goes back to my statement about 3 generations of children having been in urban areas been poisoned with carbon monoxide coming out of car exhaust pipes at child height. That oil industry is responsible for that. They know the composition of a car exhaust pipe. They know they've been poisoning the children for 3 generations with carbon monoxide. And the green movement, bless its socks, has been talking about carbon dioxide all that time. Now, I watched a video from one of the people at Standing Rock. The first person I really heard, I don't have the link, I couldn't find it again. Right, of this guy, who looks like an ex-serviceman to me, talking about the truth, about what happens once all the media, these people that set up a GoFundMe campaign, right, and they get massive floods of funding to go and support people at Standing Rock or a demonstration in this country going back years, which I've observed. And he just said exactly the same thing in America, right, and he took it further with his mates, right, and all the donations, looking at the logs of the GoFundMe account, you can see when donations occur. If you keep it live on your screen, it can refresh it. And they're looking at them and they're all the same. And then at a certain time, when you've got up to a certain number of votes, suddenly they're all those accounts which only donated below a certain figure, suddenly all donate £50,000 at the same time, right, within a minute. So somebody's pressed the button and they've all gone out, right, and he's shown that, right. And so this is funded by wealthy people, right, these massive GoFundMe, that's what he's saying, right. I don't know, I haven't checked all his sources, but he was speaking what rang truth, my experience of what's happened in England with the eco movement. It's been polluted and sold off bit by bit by bit, and people get offered jobs, and as long as they keep their mouth shut. It's obvious, why have they spent all these resources? I mean, look at if the people who are destroying the planet and financing both sides of the wars, right, are owning the media, right, anything that gets into the media in a big way has got to be suspect. And carbon dioxide is a classic example. But again, I'm still staggered about how the fact anyone believed it. I've never believed it, right from the beginning. I was there at the meetings in London when they decided to use it as a campaign issue, and at that point, our paths diverged, because I thought this was ridiculous. I didn't realise, it seems, if they're doing exactly the same thing now in America, then it seems like it's not just ridiculous, but it's intentional. Which is seriously criminal. That is a difference in injuring someone. Take the tort law, the duty of care, which is this common law thing I keep on about. Injuring another person is unlawful. Well, you can do it in self-defense, that's only time. And you're allowed to use reasonable force in self-defense. Whatever the circumstances, you're allowed to use reasonable force. Right, so, Colleen, rescue me again, sorry.
Okay. Well, we'll go back to the,
just a little bit.
GoFundMe things. I think that there are some that are quite legitimate, but then there are as well a bunch who are not. And as far as Standing Rock goes, there's, as with any large group that gets together, there's a lot of infighting and accusations.
And infiltrating. And
infiltrators. If you've been following the, it's a FM radio station out of Fargo, Moorhead, North Dakota. They've talked a lot about all of that too, the accusations, the infiltration, and, all of that stuff. You have to you got to learn discernment, especially in these times, because you have people pointing fingers, oh, that's fake news, and that's fake news, and I think with a lot, there's a little bit of truth in all of it. You have to pull out the truth amidst all the bullshit. Because there's a lot of stuff out there, that make you doubt, okay, why am I supporting Standing Rock? When there's all this crap going on. So a lot of people, don't know what to do, so they just walk away. Which is exactly what the opposition wants you to do. So
I know what to do.
So that they can do what they want to do and say, well, nobody said no.
I know what to do.
Well, a lot of people don't. And I, in my own
I'm sure.
mind,
I can't say I know. I'm sure. I'm not 100% sure.
So, but the majority of people don't.
No.
Well, and that's the ones, because they want the majority, that's the ones that they try to confuse.
That's why I want to get on the radio.
Yeah. So, just heads up, everybody.
I'm going to go back to prana principle just for a minute.
Okay, if you can explain that all for people who haven't heard it.
Okay, so this is the fundamental principles of natural law. Don't need any textbooks. It's very simple. A 10-year-old can understand any part of it, and all of it will stand up in a lawful court of law anywhere in the world. Right, that's my constraints for what I'm about to say. Understandable by an intelligent 10-year-old, and will stand up in any lawful court in the world. Okay, most of the courts aren't lawful at the moment, but that will be remedied by the overwhelming weight of public pressure when the people know the law. That's my agenda, is to inform people about the law, to empower people to assert the lawful right to do a day's work which is benefiting the planet you and your children live on, rather than destroying it. And not to be enticed into fighting wars with each other all the time. What's the best way to get rid of all the bravest and the most intelligent and the strongest people between two countries you don't like? Or get them to kill each other and fight each other, start a war between them. And they're experts at it. They've been doing it right since the time they were in Khazaria, which is why they got thrown out of there. Right? That's what's going on. They've been doing it a long time, they're very good at it. But in their protocols of Zion, which, sorry, I've gone away from the Prana principle into a different rant, but it doesn't matter. In the protocols of Zion, which are, according to their title, protocols in this context means the minutes of a meeting or series of meetings. Zion, it is the full title, it's the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, of the meetings of the early learned elders of Zion. A protocol in that sense is the meetings of a minute, right? So the protocols of the meetings, rather than the minutes of the meetings, it's the protocols of the meetings, of the learned elders of Zion. And this book was written, allegedly in sometime early 1800s. Yeah, 17 something to 18 something, around about that sort of time. And were a plan for world domination through financial fraud to make themselves very wealthy and then to buy their way into everything, which they did. There's a battle between the Masons, who were the builders, and these financiers, these merchant banks, right? It's Dutch East India Company, Dutch East India Company. That's the British and Dutch version. Both some owned by the same banking family. The Rothschild owned Dutch Bank of Holland and the Bank of England. Right, so you get the picture. Slavery, incitement to racial hatred. Is that a good enough charge for them? Incitement to racial hatred. Slave trade. They financed it.
Yep.
Right. They've been financing both sides of every war for the last 200 years. Well, that's 250 million deaths. And they talk about 6 million that never even died. And these people inside all this with their media. Right? But as I was saying about the protocols of Zion, they were a plan. I'll put a link. Shall I put a link? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's amazing when you read it. The guy who translated it out of I think it's written in Russian. Yeah, I think it was written in Russian. Anyway, the guy who translated it was a Russian English scholar who in the British Library said he could only do 2 hours work a day on it because it made him sick. He translated this lot. Just took a look have a click on that link and see what you see. Look at the titles. The Basic Doctrine, Economic Wars, Methods of Conquest, Materialism Replaces Religion, Despotism and Modern Progress, Takeover Technique, Worldwide Wars, Provisional Government, Re-education, Preparing for Power, the Totalitarian State, Conquest, Control of the Press, Distractions, Assault on Religion, Ruthless Suppression, Brainwashing, Abuse of Authority, Arrest of Opponents, Rulers and People, Financial Program, Loans and Credit, Power of Gold, Instilling Obedience, Qualities of the Ruler. That's quite interesting, Qualities of the Ruler. I haven't read all of it, but you just got to look at the titles. Anyway, this was published, right, back in 19 something, and was immediately pounced upon by the Zionists, and everybody was told through their press, which they owned, that it was a fraud. And they denounced it, and it never got published in their media. But as I say, the internet is you won't find the internet mentioned in the Protocols of Zion, right? Now, the internet is the reason the Protocols of Zion is on that website there, right? And it's why lots of people can look at it. And when you read it, right, just look at the author of this translation of the famous protocols was himself a victim of the revolution, the Russian Revolution, what I was talking about. Translated by Victorine Marsden. He's a scholar that was in England. It's so worth looking at. And it's historical fact, documented. Who are the elders? This is a secret which has not been revealed. They are the hidden hand. They are not the Board of Deputies, the Jewish Parliament in England, or the Universal Israelite Alliance, which sits in Paris, but the late Walter Ruthno and the Allgemeine Elektrikergesellschaft has thrown a little light on the subject, and doubtless he was in possession of their names. I'm just picking a bit at random. 300 men, each of whom knows all the others, govern the fate of the European continent, and they elect their successors from their entourage. That's 1912. So, we've been under their rod for a long time. We're paying, out of our tax, we're paying in interest on our national debt to the Bank of England. Right now, the Bank of England is allegedly nationalised, but the question remains: who is paid interest on the national debt? Right? Not really very clear. But the point is, we are paying 50 billion a year. That is £1 billion a week in interest on our national debt. That is interest on a debt which was created out of nothing through fraud of virtual money, right? And we're paying £1 billion interest, and we can't afford to have a national health service. You're having problems about cost of this Obamacare, Trump care, whatever it's going to be next. You know, the issue should not even be discussed about money. It's virtual money, right? It's of no consequence. There is no economic reason not to have a health service which will look after people when they get ill, and look after old people when they can't work anymore, or look after people that are mentally disinclined to work. There's no reason. I mean, there's no financial reason for anything. I'm not saying get rid of money, but there is no economic constraint. We can pay people to do anything. So let's pay people to create a beautiful place to live, instead of paying people to destroy the planet. And then when they get so discouraged out of the lack of employment destroying the planet, they'll go and be willing to fight a war because there's no economic argument. Money based, what? You know, economic, it all comes back down to the money, and it doesn't exist. Right? So that's the power that we need to retake. That's the usury. That is why Jesus threw the money changers out of the temple, because of usury. Charging interest on a loan of money. Right, so let's go back to that, right? Let's look at the first. I didn't even talk about the piranha fish.
We'll get
Colin,
to it.
will you remind me to come back to usury in a second, right? And I'll do the piranha fish bit first.
Okay,
Just remind me at your point in time to back usury.
okay.
The fractional reserve banking. Right, piranha fish live in a group together, right? That's a fact, isn't it? I'm going to talk facts, simple facts that a 10-year-old can understand that will stand up in high court of law. Right, stand up in high court of law in front of a 10-year-old child and say, piranha fish live in a group. No one's going to dispute you. For them to live in a group, there has to be a law. Not written down. As far as I know, piranha fish don't have pens. And I don't even know if they talk to each other. But whatever happens in that group of piranha fish, as a general rule, the members of that group do not, as a general rule, eat or injure each other. If they did, the group would get smaller and smaller and smaller until there's only one left, which is not a group. Right? So a group has to exist. If a group is going to exist, then there has to be this law, this, whatever I call it law, LAW, that's the word I use, and it riles people when I use that law. We don't have laws of anarchists, but we do. And if it's more than one person living on their own, then there's a law, which is that the members of that group do not, as a general rule, eat or injure each other. If they did, there would not be a group. Right? So that's fact. That's again, second fact, right? Piranha fish live in groups, and to live in a group, there has to be this law. So, this law applies to any group of creatures, anywhere in the universe, at any time, in any universe. Or there can't be a group of creatures there. So therefore, if there's a god, a divinity of any description, say let's say a divine architect, to poke a little fun at the false masons that might be listening, right? A divine architect, a god of any description, or a goddess, or gods or goddesses of any description, include it all, any kind of divinity, which created the universe, then that must be divine law, that members of a group do not, as a general rule, eat or injure each other. Right? Or there can't be a group of creatures. There's only one exception to that rule I can think of, and that is if a certain divinity that created a new universe, a new group of creatures in the universe, decided to give a certain group free choice. Right? And if they did that, then that group's got to figure it out for themselves. And that's the position we're in terms of law. Right? We have to figure out for ourselves that if we carry on eating and or injuring each other as a general rule, which we're pretty close to doing, you know, the exponential rates of environmental damage, you know, that is going to reach a tipping point. Right? That's a real tipping point. When the forests can't live anymore, it's not about carbon dioxide. It's irrelevant. There's something much worse on the horizon, right? And it's not being addressed because people are talking about carbon dioxide. It's like a sucker punch, right? It's like everybody thinks you're coming from the right, and suddenly they're whacking from the left, and you won't expect it, and knocks you right on your back. That's what's going to come, right? If we don't prepare for it, the threat is as serious as a threat of world war. It is more serious. It's terrible, you know. And we have the resources, and we have the intelligence. We just don't have the information. The information is simple, right? That is the law. Right? Piranha fish, any group of creatures, anywhere in the universe, for any divinity. Point being on this, right, is that if this is divine law for any divinity, then all the world's religions have to agree on this point. Not could, might, should, or ought to. They're all different, but they have to agree on this common point, this common law. Right? This is the common law. They all have to agree on that. So, one of the main ways that we are being divided and ruled on this planet is through religion. You've got, obviously, Catholic and Protestant going on in this country for years. You've got Christian, Muslim, Islam, Judaism, and you've got Chinese, whatever their religion is, Buddhist, Hindu, fighting and killing each other for generations. Religion, one of the main ways of getting all the bravest and strongest people to kill each other. Religious wars, right? So this is a direct and simple remedy to that issue. They have to agree on something. They have to, they can't disagree. So what I'm saying, it is the basis of a direct and simple remedy to the issue of religious conflict. It doesn't mean to say we have to have one world religion. I don't want that any more than I want everybody to equal. But there is common law, and this is it, that any group of creatures has to agree. So let's make this public and get discussion on it, because it is fundamental to life. And following from that principle, we can assert the right to eco-friendly employment for every person on the planet immediately. Money, no object. That's possible. Because the police, I was going back to the police, I'm going round in circles here a bit, but I hope you get in the picture. Right, the police oath, protect life and property and not uphold the law. And someone posted the full local version of that. But if you ask that police officer, if you go and ask the police officer what's their oath, they'll tell you that. And then you ask him, you say, what would you do, officer, if you saw a threat to life or property? And he said, well, I'd try and answer that threat, sir, and if I couldn't do it myself, I'd call for assistance. And that's what a policeman should do. And that's what they'll say they would do. They might have legislation which they believe is law, which against their will and better judgment they're enacting, or maybe they enjoy it, some of them, but most of them, they join the force with the intent to deal with what they perceive as crime. They're not looking at who the real criminals are, who are their masters. Which is how come there's so many of them at Standing Rock right now. Once you get a job and you've got a mortgage and a house, you've got to do your job or you'll get thrown out on the street. So I would say, in my experience in the British police force, over 38 years of talking to them about the law, right, which I do, often and frequently as I can, and I get a good response for them, to be honest. I can tell you loads of stories about my interactions with the British police force. Quick slurp of tea.
Nick, would you like to take a break?
No.
Well,
unless you, some music or something?
Yes, I can put on some music because, I need a break.
Yeah, that's good.
Hold on just a minute while I get something in here. She says, if I can, dang it, find it. What is it? There it is. Disturbed. The sound of silence. And we'll be back in about 4 minutes.
Okay, thanks, Colleen.
Thank you. Alrighty, and we are back. Well, I am back. Nick, are you muted? Nick? Hold on a minute. Looks like I've lost him. We're going to try to get him back.
Hi.
Hi, did I lose you?
I had to turn it off because I was getting that the feed was coming through this Skype feed and through the HaggieShackRadio one, out of sync, both at different times and both quite distorted. And it was the Skype one, this call, that was coming over. I don't know why I couldn't turn it off. I tried turning the microphone off, it didn't work.
Well, see, when I go on break and play music, most people want to hear the music.
Yeah. That's why I cut the call, because I wanted to listen to the music, and I couldn't hear it. Because it was coming from here as well, from this Skype call.
Oh yeah, because you've got speakers on over there or something.
No, both coming through my headphones.
Both coming through headphones?
Yeah.
That's because you had the player on the website and as well coming through Skype.
That's right. But the Skype one was the one that was distorted. The one from the website was fine, nice and clear. So I wanted to listen to that, which is why I cut the call off.
Okay. Well, you're back now. And if you want to talk about usury,
yeah,
she's reminding you.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, Palladian sister. Hi to see you. I haven't been really watching the feed too much. I've been a bit distracted. Usury. Okay, so I'm Nathan Rothschild, the first banker of the Rothschild dynasty. In my bank in wherever he started off, Sweden or Germany, somewhere in Europe he started. I'm in the bank, and I've got a lump of gold. My mate is called Goldsmith, and he made me a lot of borrow gold, so I've got a lump of gold to start me off. And I've got the gold on the table. If someone comes in the bank, they want to borrow the piece of gold. They want to build a factory in the area. I say, sure, yeah, you can borrow the piece of gold, but it's a bit heavy to carry around. And I'll tell you what, if you go out of this door, someone's going to knock you on the head and steal it off you. What I'll do, I'll write you a note saying it's your bit of gold. I'll charge you 10% per year. Eco is Nick, that's right. Yes. Nick.
It gets confusing because there's Nick without number, and there's you, and there might be another Nick. And right now they're talking about a guy that's maybe training to produce.
All right.
So it gets a bit confusing.
Hi, Palladian sister. Wow, I've never been on a show like this before. Oh my God. It's nice. Usury. I've got a piece of gold. The person's come in the bank. They want to borrow the piece of gold. They want to finance a building of a factory. They want to bring employment and prosperity to the area. I say, sure, you can borrow the piece of gold, but you take it out here, someone's going to steal it off you. It's heavy to carry around. What I'll do, I'll write you a note. I'll say it's your piece of gold. We'll both sign it. I'll give you the piece of paper. And on the piece of paper, it will say that the piece of gold is now yours that you've borrowed off me, and that you're going to pay me 10% per year in interest to borrow it. So I put the piece of gold in the safe deposit box, which is inside my main safe. And I give the customer the key to the safe deposit box, lock the main safe up, and give him the key to the safe deposit box and the piece of paper we both signed. I retain a copy. Off he goes. He gives the piece of paper and the key, put it simple, to the builder. And the builder builds the factory. The factory opens. I'm getting my 10%. Everyone's happy. I'm sat in the bank one day a bit bored. Someone comes out. Another person comes in the bank. They want to borrow a piece of gold. I say, come back. I'll make you a special appointment. So you go away and you put your suit and tie on. And you think, oh, I'm going to a hello, Palladian sister. How are you doing? I'm trying to talk. Yes, charged on lent money. Yes, exactly. Aristotle talked about usury, and he said, and I quote, money, being in itself naturally barren, it is preposterous to make it breed more money. That's what Aristotle said about usury 2,000 years ago. So, I'm sat in the bank, someone else come in the bank, they want to borrow a bit of gold. I've made them an appointment. So when you go to the bank, you think you're all important, you put your suit and tie on. It's for an appointment with the bank manager. It's not for your privacy, it's for their privacy. They can't have 10,000 people coming in the bank one day. They're all paying 10% per year to borrow that piece of gold. And it's the same piece of gold, right? That's when you get a bank run. Okay, and there's going to be another big one on the internet. Thank you, Nick, with that number. If you, I've got a YouTube channel with various videos. Some of them are better than others. The blog is most of this information written out painstakingly over the years and put together rather ramshackled. And similarly, the videos are about the same as that, put together bit by bit. Not really coherently, but the points are raised. Oh, thanks, Nick. Wow, somebody's looking at my stuff. Oh my God. Wow. Usury. So the second person comes in the bank at the private appointment, and they want to borrow a piece of gold to set up another factory in healthy capitalistic competition with the first factory. And I say, sure, you can borrow the piece of gold, and if you take it out of here, someone's going to steal it off you. It's heavy to carry around. What I'll do, I'll write you a note, send it to your piece of gold, I'll charge you 10% to borrow it. I'll put it in a safe deposit box, a different one. I've got various safe deposit boxes inside my main safe, each one with a different key. So if they two meet down the pub or at the Masonic meeting, and they've both got the same key, that's not going to look very good. So they've all got different keys, but it's a different safe deposit box. But there's only one bit of gold. So fractional reserve banking is when they lend out 10 pieces of paper for one piece of gold. That's the fraction, right? It's 1 in 10, right? You can lend out 10 times more money than you've got gold. That's what they found out, right? In the beginning of banking, before people start getting suspicious. So 10 pieces of paper on one piece of gold that I've got. I've got 10 people paying me 10% per year to borrow that piece of gold. So by the end of 1 year, I've got the original piece of gold, and I've got 10 pieces of paper, which is equivalent wealth of 10% of that piece of gold. Put them together, 10 times 10% is 100%. I've got a piece of gold, and I've got the equivalent wealth in paper of another piece of gold. Which, as long as people believe in those pieces of paper, I can swap for another piece of gold, which I do. Now, I can write 10 pieces of paper on each of those pieces of gold. 10 times 100, 10 on, is 100% on one piece. 10 times 10 is another 100% on the other piece of gold. After another year, I've now got 2 real pieces of gold and enough bits of paper to buy another 2 pieces of gold, which I do. So now I've got 4 bits of gold. I can now write 10 pieces of paper on each of those 4 pieces of gold. Each one doubles. Now I've got 8 pieces of gold. Now I can write 10 pieces of paper on each of those pieces of gold. Each one doubles. Now I've got 16. So it doubles every year. That is what is called an exponential curve. And to get it in perspective, I'll go slowly. I'll start with 1. After 1 year, I've got 2. Another year is 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1,024 if you count it on your fingers. After 10 years, you've got 1,024 pieces of gold if it doubles every year. Okay, so let's call it 1,000, keep it simple. I like simple things. 10-year-old child, remember, and high court. Is there anything I've said so far that a 10-year-old child cannot understand or that will not stand up in high court? I don't believe so. After 1 year, after 10 years, I've got 1,024, call it 1,000, right? So if I start with 1, and after 10 years I've got 1,000, if I start with that 1,000, after another 10 years I have 1,000 times that, which is 1,000,000. So, 1,000,000 pieces of gold, remember 1,000,000 millimeters is a kilometer, so it's a kilometer's worth of millimeters. That many bits of gold, after 10 years. If I start with 1, after 10 years I've got 1,000. After another 10 years I've got 1,000 times 1,000, that is 1,000,000. That is a kilometer's worth of millimeters after 20 years of banking. Sorry, 20 years of banking. First 10 years is 1,000. Second 10 years is 1,000 times 1,000. The third 10 years is 1,000 times that, which is 1,000 million. So after 30 years, I've got 1,000 kilometers worth of millimeters in bars of gold. Right? That's after 30 years. After 40 years, it's first it's lost 1,000, and it's 1,000 times 1,000, which is 1,000,000, then 1,000 million. After 40 years, 1,000 times 1,000 million, which is 1,000,000 times 1,000,000, which incidentally is an English billion. The traditional English billion is 1,000,000 times 1,000,000. The European and the American billion they talk about in the news these days, it's only 1,000 million. Right? That's another reason England's great, because our billion is 1,000 times bigger than everybody else's. That's my little joke. But anyway, probably nobody's laughing. I bet if I could hear you all. I wonder if you'd be laughing at my joke. I doubt it, probably. Anyway, I don't care. I think it's funny. So, oh my God. Phone ringing. No. Million times a million. How big is that? Right? Well, if you imagine in seconds, right, a million times a million works out at 39,000 years of seconds in time. So imagine 39,000 years, and imagine how many seconds that is. That's roughly a million times a million, according to my maths. Right, so that's after 40 years banking. Right, it's 1,000-fold each 10 years. 1,000 times 1,000 million, 1,000 million, 1,000 times 1,000 million, which is a million times a million, which is a billion, after 40 years. That's 39,000 years. Okay, so next year it doubles. It's doubling every year. Right? And they started 200 odd years ago. Which is why I can say with confidence that I believe it when people say that they own every national bank in the world apart from 3. The last 3 being Syria, Syria, Iran, and I think they've got Cuba now. I think Hungary threw them out and Putin threw them out just lately. Right, so that's how they got wealthy. That's how they took over the Masons. Masons is another subject. How long have we got, Colin? Shall we just carry on, or do you want to stop?
Well, we can go on longer if you want.
Yeah, I'll carry on. Is it being recorded? Are you recording it?
I am.
Awesome. I forgot to ask at the beginning.
And JP sent me over an intro and an outro for it, so I can put an
awesome.
intro on it, edit out some of the fan sound kind of things, and put it all together and put it up in the archives.
Awesome.
So it'll be in the free archives for a week.
Awesome, even better. So I can put it on Facebook and people can watch it. Have I got this link on my Facebook page? Did I put it? I did, didn't I? I'm sure I did.
And you can put it up on your YouTube channel too, if you want.
Oh, even better. Oh no, what have I done? Do you know what?
What?
I didn't put the link on my page. Oh my god! Didn't put the link on my Facebook page. I thought I did it. Oops. Oh god. Oh, what am I like? Right, Colin, could I please? Where is it? Is it there? There it is. I've got it. I know where I put it. I put it in I know what it is. I put it in my fracking aquifers page. I didn't put it on my Facebook personal page, which I meant to do both. I forgot. Right, so they've got all this money, and they own the national banks of every country in the world. But now, look, this incredible. They couldn't possibly have made that amount of money. I mean, even in the days when we had paper money up until we still have. I mean, you know, the amount of paper to represent all that money would fill the whole planet of the Earth to a depth of 10 feet in paper, probably. I don't know what the figures would be, but I mean, it's an incredibly stupidly amount of money. But they've effectively created an infinite supply of money out of nothing through criminal fraud, right? Oh, I still haven't put the link on my Facebook page. I'm distracting myself so much. No, wrong link.
It does get confusing at times.
Try that way.
I did put a notice up on HaggieShack, or on Facebook, my HaggieShack page as well, with the article that you sent me, and I put that up there with it, saying that we were going to go live with that one as well. So, if people share, this show will not be a regularly scheduled show because of Nick's schedule, which is kind of on call.
I drive a recovery truck, and I can get called any time, basically.
Right. So
it's less at this time of night, to be honest. It's less.
Yeah. So I will be posting when we do go live and on my Facebook page and in my chat room here to let people know. And if you guys will also share that information on your social media, that will help get the word out to more and more people. So if y'all do that, we sure would appreciate it.
Please, that would be great. It's just that I want this information out. I've resisted, any kind of like personal. I've been doing this for 38 years. Trying. I still think after all this time that theatre is the way forward. Storytelling, it's what the man did. Even Jesus, and the Sufis, they tell stories, and these stories have got incredible meanings inside them. And we could, I can sit and talk about law and you'll get bored with it, but to tell stories, it's different.
Well, so, and we're geared toward the entertainment side of information.
Exactly. It's got to be enjoyable, isn't it? And, I mean, yeah, it's got to have humour. And
humor, drama, a little bit of everything in there, makes people remember.
Yeah, a laugh, a tear, and a song. I think that was. So how to let's forget about the law for a minute and talk about something. Let's talk about theatre. At least won't be doing theatre, but we can talk about it a bit. Someone just pinged me. What? Oh. Okay, so theatre. The way I see it, right, would be a Skype group call, right, of a bunch of people who are prepared to use their voice in something which could become quite public. Well, the whole intention of it is to become very public, to become to catch the internet by storm.
And
right?
You could still stay rather anonymous.
Yeah, but it's going to be your voice. I mean, you can use voice, you can distort voices, but I don't want distort voices. I want not human voices on it. So
right.
That's the thing. So, and you can be recognised by your voice, especially with mobile phones. They've all got digital tracks of all our voices. They know who we are, And I hope they're listening, and I hope they're going to do theatre themselves and entertain themselves, and in their way, whoever they are listening, learn themselves about common law and how empowering it is to overthrow the masters of them.
Right, and what's really going on? Because, I mean, those that are listening only hear one side of this.
Well, until they listen.
Until they listen. And then they go, oh, wow, huh.
It's the best way. The fact they're listening is the best possible way for us to infiltrate the whoever they are listening. We can infiltrate them. They're not big, the people who are listening to us are not like, high up the hierarchy, They might be a little bit higher up. They're not foot soldiers, but they might be, who knows who's listening and how they're doing it,
Well, they're paid. They're paid employees to listen. For the most part,
Yeah, same as anyone else, basically. Yeah. Same as a copper, same as the lumberjack, that's what I use as my before Standing Rock came along. Lumberjack, day in the life of a lumberjack. You try going to work with a chainsaw, chopping down trees all day long, right? Not to try and help with trees like a tree surgeon would, but commercially, good, healthy, strong trees, chopping them down all day long. Try maintaining your sacred relationship to a tree at the same time as doing that job. Right? And I've done that job, and I know it's impossible. Drive you absolutely mad. Stark staring mad. You have to become numb. You have to cut your feelings off. Boys don't cry, stiff up a lip, all that kind of stuff. Right? That's what you have to do to yourself, or has to be done to you as a male, to be what is called a male in this so-called patriarchal society. Now, I don't call that patriarchal. I call that enslavement. That is done through the education and the media, which is owned by the same people. It's all there in the Protocols of Zion. It tells you about how they take over education, medicine, law, politics, everything. And they've done it, right? But they're exposed. Like I say, the internet is not mentioned in there. And thank God for the internet, literally. Thank God for the internet. If it wasn't for the internet, we wouldn't have a chance. They'd have done it. But the way it is now is that it's like the bully. He's got all the sweeties in the playground. Right, and all the little kids had turned around and said, hang on a minute, there's only one of him. We've all been fighting each other. You're having a laugh, mate. As they say here in London. Having a bubble bath, having a bath. So yeah, they've been found out. And all we've got to do is post haste. You know, the longer we don't make this information public, the longer they're financing, instigating both sides of every war on the planet, the more millions of people are going to, the best and bravest and most true people are going to die on both sides of every war on the planet. Right, as long as we allow them to continue doing this. Right, there's only a few of them. We take them out, we put them in the FEMA camps. Right, that's what I say. They're not Semites. Don't be mistaken, they're not Palestinian Jews. They're not the brothers and sisters and cousins of Jesus, who was a Palestinian Jew. Right? And the way you can tell, right, is in the shape of the skull. It's undeniable. Right? A Palestinian has a relatively long, narrow skull, whereas an Ashkenazi Eastern European Jew has a relatively round skull. Right? And that is undeniable evidence. So look next time you see someone calling themselves a Jew, see if they've got a round skull or a long, thin skull. Right? Check it out. See how many you can spot with a long, thin skull. People that call themselves Jews. I haven't seen any. And the statistics I've got is that 90 to 95% of Jews that call themselves Jews in the world, even up to 98%, are not Semitic. They're not of the Semitic racial descent. They're Ashkenazi Jews from Eastern Europe. So this whole thing about anti-Semitism, you know, that's all getting tipped on its head as well. That's why they've made up laws in Germany against anti-Semitism.
Well, and two, having done genealogy research for more than 20 years.
Oh, right.
It's amazing how many people think that they are totally European that are not.
Well, yeah.
You know, you're like, whoa.
What is European?
Well, you know, what our modern society says European is. Well, here anyway, our people came over on the Mayflower from England, you know, or it came over from Ireland. Well, you know what? Those people that came here were from there were probably somewhere before that. And you trace this back thousands of years. And you ain't what you think you are.
Go on, tell us. What is it?
Say what?
Tell me.
Well, there are some, you know, where they've done the genealogy tests and stuff, and people say, oh, I hate those Palestinians, or, you know, those Iraqis, or whatever. And you got a room full of people all together for, you know, waiting on their results and such. And they find out that those very people they hate is in their bloodline. In one episode I watched, a woman's second cousin was one of those people that she hated. And she didn't know that was her second cousin, didn't know him at all.
Right.
So my thing is, you know, our society tries to teach us to hate this group or that group for whatever reason, because of their nationality, their religion, their race, their sexual orientations, and a whole lot of other reasons. Trump supporters versus non-Trump supporters, you know, all kinds of silly stuff. That, when it comes down to it, we're all related somehow, all connected somehow.
For sure.
So
there's not much difference between us and an earthworm, is there, in genetic terms?
Well, I don't know. I've not done any DNA research on that.
Well, I haven't done it, but I saw something like 95% of our DNA is identical to an earthworm.
Well, I know that, you know, that it doesn't take a whole lot.
To do a whole lot.
You know, a whole lot of difference between an ape and man.
No.
For instance. And as you say, earthworm and man, kind. Not man, per se. But there's not a whole lot. It's just a very, very small percentage difference that changes everything.
Now, Clock, there is no English people. There's no such thing as an English race. We're multicultural. We've been multicultural going back thousands of years in this country. There's no such thing as an English race. You know, it's a ridiculous thing to say. As an English people, it's like the Phoenicians, right? I've written a story. It's an interpretation of Sleeping Beauty, and it tells the story of how we've got in the mess we're in, starting 15,000 years ago when there's no people in the land of Albion, which is another name for what is now the United Kingdom or the British Isles. British Isles, right, it was Albion it used to be called, that's including Ireland as well. It was a fairyland, you know. Look at the spelling of Ireland, E-I-R-E. Put an F at the beginning, you've got fairy. Right, so it's the land of fairy, it's the last bits of it. It's in Ireland and Wales and Scotland, but England itself, where I live, has been, especially in London, has been well Romanised. You know. That's another thing, you know, we've got Roman blood, you know, as well as all the Saxon, the Celtic, the Nordic, you know. Yeah, so that's the traditional European, you know, it's a mixture of Germanic we've got in this country. So the Phoenicians, right, what happened, in my story, what happens, and I think it's broadly speaking historically true, you probably correct me if I'm wrong, but in the story, it's called the Sleeping of Beauty. There's the Egyptian Empire going way back longer than is alleged at the present time, going back, you know, 15,000 years ago, say. Actually, you know, it could go back hundreds of thousands of years. So they found origins of gold mines in Africa 100,000 years old. You know, definitely gold mines, nothing else it could be. Clear. If we're to believe what we see. I don't know, have you heard about those, Colleen? About these 100 million year old gold mines in Africa?
No, I hadn't heard about those. But I do know that life on this earth, human life, is much, much, much older than what we have been led to believe.
You heard about the Bosnian pyramid in Bosnia?
Oh, yes.
4 times bigger than the greatest one in Egypt, and it's been there sitting there and playing with you for a whole time.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me levitate. And there's another thing. How are they built? You know, they're built so that you can't get a Rizzler paper between the stones. And these stones are huge.
Right.
And they're fitted together so perfectly, but they're not flat. They're not perfectly straight. The joints aren't perfectly straight. They're wiggly, where the stone is wiggly, right? And they follow each other perfectly, and you can't get a Rizzler between them.
Right.
Right. So how would you carve that?
Well, I have
not possible, right? Let me just say it over. It's not possible. As a mason, it's not possible. Not
right,
with the most advanced technology.
As a mason,
right.
But I have seen, heard, read, watched, I don't know.
Well, my theory
where
is
the stone was liquefied like a concrete and then poured into all these molds and all that kind of stuff.
No, it's not. It's plasticized. It's not liquidized. It's plasticized.
Well, whatever it is.
Like plasticine, right? If you make a pyramid out of plasticine and press it down, right, it will fit together perfectly. Right, it's like that. That's my theory.
Mm.
Right. As an engineer, as a builder of years of practical experience, I haven't got any degrees or anything, but loads of years, you know, I could build a car with the machine tools and the materials available to me. I could make the engine and build a car and it would go on the road. It wouldn't be anything posh or special, but it would work and it would go down the road. I could do that. I could build a house. I could build a boat and sail it across the sea. Very practical. So that, you know, I inherited that off my dad, you know, and so all my arguments are based from that basic common understanding. You know, simple. It's nothing complicated. The whole thing about the law, as I say, I'm going over myself again a bit. And I've lost my thread again.
Well, did we finish the usury thing?
No, probably not. Right.
Back to the story.
Yeah. Right, so they've got all this money, they've made it out of nothing. Fraud is pretending something is something which it's not, in order to gain financially or to make someone else lose financially. England is paying 1 billion virtually, fraudulently created virtual pounds, 1 billion of them, right, every week in tax. But real people are sweating in factories to earn that so-called virtual money to pay that debt, right? Now, what is it? Does anyone have off their top of their head the definition of slavery? Right? Because that constitutes slavery. Right? And it also constitutes coercion and undue influence. Right? You can't run up and down a ladder with a hod of bricks on your shoulder with chains on your feet. It doesn't work very well. They've been doing that in this country for a long time, right? And they're doing it everywhere now. And I have seen it now. I've seen exactly what's going on. As I say, I know what to do about it. Expose it to the sunlight. That's all it takes. Right? Well, who was it said that Henry Ford said that if people knew how the banks operate, there'd be a revolution in the morning? Well, that's what we need, and that's how it's going to happen. Right? And they're being exposed right now, this minute. They are guilty of criminal fraud. They've been financing both sides of every war for the last 200 years. Right? Since Napoleon. That was the first time they did it. Napoleon, they lied. Rothschild sat in the stock exchange in London, he sold all the shares of whichever side won the war, the Napoleonic War. I forget which side won now. He sold all the shares, making everybody think that they lost, right? Sold all the shares. They hit rock bottom the next day. When people found out that they hadn't lost, it was the other side. By that time, he bought them all at rock bottom prices because everybody followed him because he was a big man in the bank. Why is he saying all this shit? Quick, better sell ours. That's rubbish. Right? There was a crash, right? He initiated that crash consciously, intentionally, right? Knowing they'd do that. Next morning, they're all nothing. Bought the whole lot for nothing, right? And took over. Right? And they've been doing it ever since. Every crash is engineered by them for that purpose. And look at how many people lose their houses under this so-called austerity. Working people who, if they knew this information, that would not be happening. And I'm talking about the intelligence services who are listening to us, because I've been talking to them about this for 38 years as well, right? And they know what I'm talking about. They're listening to me. If they're not listening to me, they're stupid.
It's kind of the same way that the pipelines work, isn't it?
Exactly.
They're made to leak because they make money off of that too.
Well, I don't care who makes what money or who owns what particularly, right? I mean, I wouldn't mind being a slave even if I was creating a beautiful place to live. If I'm fed and I don't really want luxury. I'm living in a truck, in the back of a truck in a yard. Well, I don't need a lot of luxury. I'm not bothered about it. You know, other people might want more of me. But I think there should be a maximum wage as well as a minimum wage. And it should be a differential of not more than 100-fold. Maximum, absolute maximum. And I do recognise that a position of extreme responsibility. But then let's talk about that. Slavery not free to do what I want. Can't do that. Hang on, what's now o'clock just asked me to do something just now. I completely ignored it. I didn't ignore it, but what do you suggest people do? Most people survive in just day to day at now o'clock. Yeah. Well, what I suggest we do is get a group of people together that want to take part in a piece of radio theatre, and each choose a character. Right, something that, say, imagine you've got a character that you want to play. Right, who that is, what it is, how it feels to be that character. Right, so everybody in this group has decided what character they want to play. So now we're in the group, and we all say, well, I want to be this, everybody knows who's going to play what. And from all that, we've got an idea what we want to do. We want to take a bunch of people who know there's a serious problem with the environment, but think we can't do anything about it. And in 10 minutes, we want to change their mind into, there's a problem with the environment, we can see what it is, we know what to do, let's do it. Right? That's a 10-minute challenge piece of theatre. Right? We know, everybody knows there's a serious problem. Right, the way to establish that is to ask anybody that first question, which is more serious, environmental damage or threat of world war. Let's do a poll on that right now. Right, who thinks which one's more serious out of those two threats? Right, it's going to be some people say one, some people say the other. What do you base differentiating people's wages on? Experience and ability and responsibility. That's what I base differentiating wages of people on. Because, take a building site, which is a classic, that's what a mason is. A mason is a builder, it's a person who works with stone. Right? So let's look at 30 people. on a building site, building a house, building whatever they're building, right? And it's going up, the walls are getting higher, it's getting dangerous, right? So those guys, there's mostly men, right, in this culture at least. I don't know, I think there are definitely masons around the place. There's certainly women who can build a house as well as anyone else can, or better. But anyway, I'm just talking about classic European Masonic structure at the present time, at this moment, as best I know it. Mostly men. They've got to know what they're doing on that building site, or it's going to fall down, and or someone's going to get hurt or killed. It's dangerous, right? So you can't say to me that an apprentice who walks onto that building site the first day, having been given a chance to get involved in that process, right, has the equal value in that day's work as the person who spent 30 years and is now managing it, right? Because the only way you can get to know what you're doing on a building site is with experience. And the only way you can get that experience is start as an apprentice. And it takes about 6-7 years to learn a skill on a building site. Carpenter, mason, electrician, takes time. You know, you can go to college and do it in 6 months, but you haven't got the experience to be able to do the job when it comes to different circumstances. You can go on a building site and do the same job all day long, building flats, right? But you can't build an individual house. You don't get given those skills these days. But you would do originally. It's broad education. You're fit to build a house, repair one, help your friends out. And that's how, and obviously those guys have got to work together on that building site, and it's got to be safe. And that's just common sense. You don't need health and safety regulations for that, right? It's perfectly obvious that it won't work without the reasonable level of safety, which is, again, is the common law. You know, the piranha fish principle. Do not eat or injure each other as a general rule. Applies on a building site. Otherwise, there'll be no builders left. Right? So they've got to obey that law. Right? That is Masonic law. So it's ancient natural law. It's divine architect in terms of Masons. That's why it's, right? You see how strong this principle is, right? And the bankers have fraudulent, you know, they've created this fraud, this monstrous fraud of virtual money with which they wield their, shall we call it, satanic power over mankind, right? So why, they've got this virtual money, they've got an infinite supply of virtual, why aren't they happy? Why aren't they happy? Because, right, happiness is actually our true self-interest of everybody on the planet. Ubuntu, yeah. Exactly. Right, so if I'm going to say, then I'm going to say, right, I'm 100% selfish, right? I want to be happy, right? To be happy, I need to be healthy in general terms. I'm going to talk in general terms. There are exceptions. You can knock little holes and spend hours talking about little exceptions, this and that and the other. But in general, the same as way, in general, members of a group don't eat or injure each other as a general rule. In the same way, if I want to be happy, I need to be healthy. And again, in a general sense, if I want to be healthy, I need a healthy planet to live on. So it's pure self-interest for every single person on this planet to have a healthy planet to live on. Males, females, whatever religion, whatever race, old, young. Pure self-interest to have a healthy planet to live on. Now that seems like an obvious statement, but you'd be surprised when you talk about environmental issues to people. How many people say, oh, people are too selfish to care about the planet? I say, no, you got it all wrong. People are not selfish enough. They just don't realise what their self-interest is. Right? It's a pure self-interest for every single person on this planet to have a healthy environment. So that knocks that little argument out of the way, right? With the simple one. Pure self-interest. So let's imagine, right, we've got the healthy planet, but still, for some reason, everybody's sick and miserable. Well, if everybody around me is sick and miserable, I'm not going to be very happy, right? Unless I'm one of the twisted ones that cause them all to be unhappy, then I might have a little smirk on my face, but it's not what I call real happiness. I'm not happy, right? Because everybody around me is not happy. So then I can say, not only is it in my pure self-interest to be on a healthy planet, it's in my pure self-interest to be on a healthy planet surrounded by happy, healthy people. It's a general rule. That's my pure self-interest. And it's not only my pure self-interest, but I assert that it is everybody else's pure self-interest on this planet. To be on a happy, healthy planet surrounded by happy, healthy people. Pure self-interest, right? So, well, yeah, we need to be fit. You can't really help people if you're ill. That's when you need help. So we need to look after ourselves. But the collective, that's the individual thing, but collectively, we all need to fill our own glasses to create a permaculture garden on this planet. And I have my own definition of permaculture. It's an anarchic sort of culture, permaculture. My definition of permaculture is to use all of our splendid and amazing resources, such as they are, to create a beautiful place to live on. So we can all be happy and healthy together, which will make me happy. Right? That's how I look at it, right? So I'm not coming from any religious or philosophical, but it's philosophy, I would call it enlightened self-interest. I might call it that. I might presume to call it that. I've heard people talk about enlightened self-interest. I don't know if that's what they mean, but that's what I mean by it. So, on that basis, if it is my pure self-interest to be on a healthy planet with happy, healthy people around me, then, and that everything I'm doing is in my self-interest, in other words, if whatever I do, I'm either moving towards something I want, or away from something I don't want, or I'm staying where I am, on whatever level, physically, mentally, emotionally, thoughts, feelings, emotions. I'm either going towards something I want or away from something I don't want. So, my basic motivation is towards the light, to be happy. Levitate. So anything I do in my pursuit of happiness which interferes with the health of the planet I live on, or the health or the happiness of the people around me, anything interferes with those things, is against my self-interest. Because my self-interest is to be on a healthy planet with happy, healthy people. So if I'm in my pursuit of my self-interest, I am making the planet unhealthy for me to live on, and I'm surrounding myself with only unhappy and unhealthy people, then I'm not making myself happy. So if the reason I'm doing whatever I want to do is because I want to be happy, and I'm making myself unhappy, then that must be a mistake. Right? And if it's a mistake, there's no blame. So, one of the other means by which, is sort of pseudo-religious, by which we are divided, is by blame. We've got everybody blaming each other. Again, through the media, controlled by the same people. You've got men and women blaming each other. You've now even got different branches of feminists blaming each other, as well as men and women. Women are going, in the feminist movement, largely asserting the right to go to work, destroying the planet alongside men. Doesn't that miss the point of being a woman, nurturing? You join in the slavery of going to work, knowingly killing the planet you live on. Bravo. Sorry, but I don't rate that too high. Something wrong with it. Colleen, help me out again, please.
Alrighty. Well, as far as what you just said about the feminist thing, and yes, we have feminists fighting feminists, and because we disagree on how they're delivering their message. But, I think, not all jobs out there are destroying the planet.
Tell me one that isn't.
Well, I think that if you're a cook in a restaurant, you're probably not destroying the planet.
You're cooking food which has been poisoned. 80% of food in America.
Okay, but not necessarily.
80% of food in America's got GMOs in it.
Well, I grow my own.
Right, but that's a very small percentage because you're in a fortunate position. But most people, certainly, people who don't get a chance to grow their own, most people are not in that position.
All right, but the job itself, you're cooking food that's GMO. Well, you don't have a whole lot of choice these days. Exactly
the point. People don't have a choice.
But the point being that, okay, if I'm a chef in a restaurant and I'm a woman, and this guy is a chef in the same restaurant, we do the same job, we've been there the same time, and we're cooking food, serving others, there ought to be the same pay.
I wouldn't disagree with that, but I don't think it's a prime issue. It's being concentrated on and expanded upon. It is an issue, right? But I can say the same thing. I get paid less than any other person would do to do the job I do because I'm not going to go into that. It's private, but between my employer and myself. But I work for a small. One of the reasons is because I've got good internet access anytime I want it, and I'm able to do this. So, that's part of my deal.
Well, that's, but I'm just saying that, that,
No, I know what you're saying, but don't you see how that is distracting people away from the prime threat which is facing us? Which is
I do.
It's not carbon dioxide. It's not climate change. Right? We can deal with climate change if and when it happens. We've got technology to deal with it. It might wipe out some seaside cities, right? And that would be a good thing. Just organise it. State of emergency. We've got every technology we need to move those people, to house them temporarily, to build perfectly beautiful houses. Apart from, money, right? 50%, talk about people who haven't got time. 50%, you do a simple analysis of a person's wages, you'll find that 50% of everybody's income on this planet is paying interest to the banks. 50%. Right?
Well, right. And then you got taxes and all that kind of stuff. And
No. This country, we're paying £1 billion a week in tax, out of our tax, in interest.
Oh, in interest, yes. On the fake
right?
debt.
Exactly. That's just the national debt. Then add up the interest people are paying on their mortgages.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's another third of your wages gone. Right? And then add up the interest on the capital loans of the industries, the large and small, which it takes to create whatever consumer goods you're buying in a shop, be it food, technology, whatever. The capital loans involved in the process of getting that stuff to your door, to the shop where you buy it. Right? The interest on all those capital loans you're paying out of the price of that product in the shop. If I go to the shop and buy a china cup in the shop, someone's borrowed the money to buy the land to dig the china clay up from, and they're paying interest on that capital loan to the banks. Right? Someone else has borrowed the money to buy a big digger to dig the china clay up from. And it's a big machine and it costs a lot of money, and they're paying interest on that capital loan, and you're paying interest on those capital loans out of the price of that cup. Someone else has borrowed the money to buy an even bigger lorry for the digger to put the china clay into, take it to the china clay factory. Someone else has borrowed the money to set up a china clay factory. Someone else has borrowed the money to buy another lorry, take the china clay to the cup factory, to set up the cup factory, another lorry to take the cups to the wholesaler, to set up the wholesaler, another lorry to take the cups to the retailer, and to set up the retailer. Right, you're paying interest on all those capital loans. Right, not counting the advertising, the paperwork, all the rest of it, interest on those capital loans of people that had to buy a photocopy machine, they had to borrow money to get their small business to be part of it. Right, interest, right, 50, well, depending on whether something's capital intensive or labour intensive. But even if it's labour intensive, you're paying interest on the mortgages of the people that are working for that company. So it doesn't, but it'll probably average out about 50% of anything you buy in the shops is paying interest. Right. In America, right, the figure is very close to the interest on the United States national debt to the Federal Reserve Bank, right, is approximately the same as the income through income tax of the United States government. Right, I think it's about the same. The interest rate is just about covered by the income tax. That's how big it is. That's their income. That's out of 2 countries in the world. 50 billion a year, $1 billion a week here. I think it's about probably 6 billion in America, probably maybe more. That's just 2 countries. They own every national bank in the world. And they get interest. They've all got them all, they've had them all, right, they're all fighting each other, they're all in debt up to their necks. It's a financial crisis because everybody's in debt. To whom? To the people that are financing the wars and initiating them through the media which they own. So it's a time that the intelligence services, I hope they're listening, wake up to this, right, and tell each other all about it. And like I say, it's the best way for us to infiltrate the intelligence services about what's going on. That's a gift, perfect gift from God, the internet. Wow. Bless. We can do this, we got this. Already. I've also in my life seen crop circles. I'm fortunate to live in England for that one reason. Because I saw something. Would you please try again to answer my question about females? Sorry, I didn't see the question. Just would be recruiting like males. Isn't what I asked. What did you ask? Sorry, I didn't see the question first.
Okay, what she asked, I'll try to scroll up and try to find it, but it was, how do you value motherhood? Something about that up in there. I'm trying to find it now. And if now o'clock, if you can repost that question, otherwise we're going to be here for a while I'm trying to scroll. There. Nope, that's not it. If you can repost it for us, that'd be great. But it had to do
How does it value, how would I value females?
Well, it was along the lines of how one values the work that we each do.
Right.
One above the other, what's important, skill, time, learning, and all that. And it had to do with motherhood. And how
would mothers be fitted into that?
Right, as far as pay, because, we do that for free, pretty much. So that's the gist of it.
Okay, well, I don't like the word equality, as I said earlier. I don't like it. So that, immediately that question is asked. Well, how do you deal with it? So if everyone's not going to get paid equally, what standards would we judge someone's work to be more valuable or less than another person? Well, one is that the apprentice who walks on that building site has got no idea what's going on and is actually a liability and has to have eyes on it at all times, or he's going to either hurt himself or do something which is going to make someone else's life dangerous. So at the beginning, he's not worth his salt. And everybody wants, we should have the same as the person who's been there 10 years. Well, excuse me, but there's a hierarchy there, and it's a hierarchy based on wisdom and experience. Right, so say I want to join the Masons, right, and I'm not a member of a Masonic lodge, by the way. I'm not. I am a free Mason. I can build a house from the bottom to the top. How do you value motherhood on home duties in your system of valuing? Right, okay, so my system of valuing, we go into the concept of the talking circle. For anyone who doesn't know, the talking circle is a circle of people who are concerned to discuss something without all shouting at each other all the time, or any of the time even, to discuss something together on a rational level or a feeling level if it's not rational, but at least, not on an abusive level where one person takes over and speaks all the time like I'm doing all the time now. Right, well, I'm doing it with consent because anyone can turn it off if they don't want to, so I'm not imposing that on anybody. So, anyway, talking circle, bunch of people sitting in a circle, round a fire probably. Yes, now you asked me how would you how I was talking about apprenticeships earlier and then I saw your question, so I've now diverted into your question about motherhood. But it's still all very tied up together. And about motherhood and how they'd be valued, I would do it in a talking circle, which is what I'm explaining right now is how I perceive a talking circle, having been in quite a number of them and seen how they work and how they don't work. Right, a talking circle, that would be my proposed form of government, which would decide those questions. Right. I've been thinking about it a long time. So if we get rid of usury, which means, sorry now, I might not answer your question. You might have to ask me again if I get this, because I will divert. I'm not very good at keeping on the same. It's all so related. It's like spaghetti. It's all simple, but I'll try. The way is talking circles, right? That's how I see it. That's my simple answer is through talking circles. And, ECO has a specific system. Yeah. Well, it's a proposal for a system which I would suggest is talked about in a forum of talking circles. Because I think, having been involved in the eco-active movement for quite a number of years, it's the best form of reaching decisions that I know of. Not to say you can't reach good decisions without talking circles, but when you've got a bunch of people who all got different opinions around a table trying to discuss something, a talking circle, it's a mechanism which works, where everybody gets a chance to speak. And if people are sat in a circle, and one person has a talking stick, and they're the only person that can speak. That's the rule, right? Only person with the stick is the person who can speak. They speak. As long as they want, in a good talking circle, you can let it go on for days. It's a lodge, it's a sweat lodge. In Indian times, they do it in a teepee. Right, that's how It's ancient. It's the best way of forming decisions. It's how the protest movement has evolved and how it works. That's the mechanism by which it works. It's got limitations. There are things called the Delphi technique, which is a way of taking over a meeting and making it arrive at a prearranged or predetermined conclusion. It's a perversion of it, but it's discoverable and exposable and dealable with. So we've got rid of usury, which is to relieve us of working for 50% of the week. 50% of the week is we're paying interest out of our national debt, out of the tax, out of our mortgage. Oh yeah, if you borrow money for a mortgage, you're going to pay back the same amount twice or three times over the price of a mortgage, over the term of a mortgage. So twice, half your mortgage is paying interest. Three times, 2/3 of your mortgage is paying interest to the banks, as well as half your tax, or all of your tax. In America's case, all of the income tax in America is paying interest to the banks. And out of what you pay in the shops for purchases you buy in the shops, half of that is paying interest due to the capital loans and all the different processes involved. Right? So if you get rid of usury, you're only working half the amount of hours in the week, right, for the same standard of living financially. Okay. So now we're doing also half the amount of damage to the environment. Now I'm talking in simple terms. You can make complicated. Let's keep it in simple terms, right? And keep it on that simple level because it's easy to discuss. Otherwise we get involved in the heads of the Hydra, which is pointless. You can spend hours and hours and hours and get nowhere. Which is one of the techniques of the Delphi technique, is to distract this conversation away from its purpose. So, and I do that well enough all by myself without what I was saying. Holly, what was I saying?
Well, let me see.
A woman. Oh, the decision. Sorry, yeah, the talking circle. Sorry, I remembered. Talking circle. So we've established we've got plenty of time. We're only working half the amount of the week, right? So on a Friday afternoon, right, there's a talking circle. Right, there's a time culturally. There's a time, say, in the New World Order, the One World Government, right? I'm just saying, example Friday. Anybody can choose a different week. They don't have to do this, but no, we're not. But we're invoking a state of emergency for the environment. All resources, money, no object. It is virtual money created out of fraud, right? And we have invoked a state of emergency for the environment. Money, no object, right? When they fight a war, they just spend the money out, throw money at it, right? So state of emergency for the environment, right? That's what we can do. We're not doing it because people don't know the information, but we can do it. We can invoke, right? Immediate permaculture, right? Now, we don't have to do that, but that's what I would suggest. Using our technology to make a beautiful place to live. I don't think anything better I could rather do than go to work doing that. I'd come home from work and my kids would be saying, Daddy, what have you been doing today? I want to do that when I grow up. Right? Instead of saying, Daddy, why are you going to work destroying the planet? I've got to live on for the rest of my life. Which isn't so good. So that's what I want to see. I want to be happy. That's what I want to see. That would make me happy. I think it would. I hope it would. And I hope it would make all of us happy. Most of us. You can't please all the people, but if we're going to knock each other over the head with bits of wood, let's at least do it in a healthy planet. I'll say that far as utopia goes. I don't believe in utopia. I don't think people are all going to get on with each other all the time about everything. I don't think, but at least we can for sure. You know, we have the technology. If we can work on a building site and build a house, we can build a beautiful place to live. Right? And we've got to do it with discipline and common sense. And the way of deciding is the talking circle. Get back to the talking circle because that's how we decide women's wages as well, right? And men's wages and apprentices' wages. And it's not about gender. It's about some measure of. You can't. I don't know. It's difficult. This is why it needs more people to talk about it. So the talking circle on a Friday afternoon. You go to your local talking circle. Minimum 10 people, maximum 30, 50 people. 30 people probably is about enough. 10 is good. It's a good number. 20 is good. So on that Friday afternoon, you don't have to go, but if you go, you get paid. You get paid your expenses. You get paid a certain little amount, you know, not to make you want to go for the money, but at least to cover your expenses. So you're not being you're not going because of money, right? You're going to be looked after when you go there, right? It's a talking circle. And you discuss whatever needs to be discussed. And you can choose your own circle. You don't have to do it in a building. You can do it under a tent. You can do it in the woods. You can do it by the forest. You can do it in a cafe or a pub. It doesn't have to be a circle. A circle works best. And if buildings were more in circular fashion, it would be much easier. But you can still make a circle in a square. You can square the circle, or circle the square. It's possible. So we're sitting in our circle, and we've got one person with a talking stick, and they speak. And the first round of a circle is everybody says what they want to go on the agenda. So someone's got a bit of paper and they write down all the items of agenda. And if you're going to do it formally, then the next round of the circle, people vote for each item that's been put on the agenda. And the number of people voting decides the order of the agenda. And then the next after that, they start talking about the first item on the agenda. And that's how the agenda is formed at a talking circle meeting, to the best of my knowledge. There's lots of different ways of doing it, but that's the best way, the simplest way I can think of describing it. Right, so you do a talking circle, and you discuss what needs. You probably won't get through it all, but you're sitting there in a circle. Each person's getting a chance to speak. It's pretty fair. Most people are going to be fairly happy with it. It's not costing them anything to do it, and it's virtual money, so we can pay them to do that. Right, and out of that talking circle, there's an election at the end, if you like, each week, because it's going to be every Friday. I'm suggesting, right? Could be monthly, but I think every week is good. I think keeps people in touch with each other. So you elect 1 in 10. So you have a 1, 2, 3, first, second, third choice. The votes go together, paper ballot, and counted in the circle in view of everybody. 1 in 10 is elected. If you get elected, you don't have to go. But if you decide to go and say, yeah, all right, I'll represent the circle at the next meeting. 1 in 10, right? So the next circles which would meet will be a tenth of the first lot of circles. Say in this country we've got 60 million people. So say 30 million people. Optimistically, I would say probably more like 20 probably would go to the meeting, if that. But say 20 million people go to the meeting. The next day of the week, which might be Monday by then, because you've done your Friday, you had the weekend to discuss about it. Monday, you go back if you're elected, you go back to another meeting on Monday, right? Which will be a tenth of the number of people of the original meeting on the Friday, right? So if it's 60 million people that week, and it was 20 million, so the next meeting, if the first meeting is 20 million people in the country, the next meeting will be 2 million people. So on a Monday, 2 million people are meeting. On a Tuesday, 200,000. On Wednesday, 20,000. On a Thursday, 20,000. 2,000. On a Friday, 200. So at the same time as your Friday national talking circle is going on, Friday, say 200-ish, that is entirely dependent on how many people vote each week. And they're going to be different each week, these people in this 200. It's not going to be an elected. They only get a week's tenure, right? So they meet, this 200 meet, and that's like the House of Commons for the week. Okay? Now that is going to be different people each week. You'd be lucky to get to the same people in a year. Out of 60 million people, you might get a few, but it's going to be different every week. So I think that's fairly incorruptible, but it's no good for long-term policy making. But as a House of Commons, or as a House to criticise long-term legislation made by another House, it could work. So say there's a more stable House, right, which would be elected in that 200. Some of them are going to get elected towards the top more often than others, right? So if you get elected a certain number of times in a year, that qualifies you to become a member of another House, which is more long-term, say 5 years. I don't know, I'm plugging this all out of my own head. So this needs to be discussed in a circle, right, to thrash it out and see the best way forward, how government could work. But basing it on a traditional indigenous technology, which is a talking circle, right, is the best way that I can possibly think of to arrive at community-based decisions which are fresh and relevant immediately and truly democratic. There's no party system in that. Right? There's no one party. There's no whips. There's no one who can get hold of anybody and really influence them in a time of a week. It'd be difficult for it to be corrupted, especially when the other house, right, is composed of people who've been in that circle, in that first level. Each level of circles, 2 million, 200,000, 20,000, 2,000, 200. Each of them levels, you get elected to a certain height. Do you see? It qualifies you to be on another level of another house, locally, regionally, nationally. And that house of 200, or maybe might need to be larger, maybe 500, I don't know, of people, they've been elected there, and they make up the legislation. Right? Their job is to enact the law, right, which is do no harm, based upon the Prana principle, which is universal fact. So that's what their job is. Right? And the weekly house criticise them. It's like a dog going, rap, 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 no, what about this? And they've got to answer to it, right? And their condition of tenure is that they can stay as long as the people say they can stay there, and no longer. If they get found guilty of crime as representatives of law, they've got to live a very high standard of life publicly. That's their job. That is what happens if you choose to elect to be in that position. As I said, if you get elected into each position, you don't have to do it, but if you do, you get paid a bit. And I think that is something that needs to be sorted out on a fair level. As I said, I think a maximum differential from the poorest apprentice on a building site arriving on the first day to the most rich would be about 100-fold differential, I would say. But that's only just me, and that can be discussed in the talking circle like everything else. I'm just putting forward ideas. No, now, that's the whole point of being elected. You're not going to elect someone who wouldn't represent you. And it's done weekly, so they've only got, even if as a member of the first circle on a Friday afternoon, and if I vote for somebody and they get elected and they don't represent me, well, I'm not going to vote for them again next week. And they only get 1 week's tenure. Local government, 1 in 10. So you've got this. So in the Friday afternoon, right, if I get elected so many times in a year, I don't know how many times it would be, but so many times in a year, right, I then become a member of this other circle, which is local. I'm going to be at that Friday circle, and I'm going to be representing that house, that Friday circle, in the other house, right, in the local House of Lords, right, which would be 1 in 10 of groups, right. I'm just putting suggestions, a framework, right, for a hierarchy, a fluid hierarchy, what I call a fluid hierarchy. Let me explain a fluid hierarchy, what I mean by that. Let's say we've got a bunch of people in a forest, and it's cold and wet and rainy, and they're cold and they're wet, and they're hungry and they're cold and they're wet, and they don't know what to do. And one of them knows how to make a fire. Well, that is what I call a hierarchy. Right? Someone might disagree, but I'd say it's a hierarchy of knowledge and experience, right? So that person knows how to make a fire. And anyone who wants to, ideally, can learn how to make a fire. But that's why we need hierarchy, because there is a hierarchy. Hierarchy is natural, that's why we're not all equal, right? Because there is someone who knows how to make a fire. Right? And in a hierarchy which is not harassed and hounded by usury, right, then that hierarchy can be beautiful. It doesn't have to be bad. You can have a happy ship, right? And it's fluid hierarchy, like I'm trying to explain. It's not a fixed hierarchy. It's elected every week. So it's hard to corrupt that, I think. Fluid hierarchy, a bunch of people in the forest, right, cold and wet and miserable and rainy, and they know that one person knows how to make a fire. So anybody who can accept the idea of hierarchy and say, oh, I can go with that. That person knows more than me. That's a hierarchy. I don't mind that. I can learn off this person. Right? Then anyone who can accept that, that's what I call a hierarchy, can learn how to make a fire. And anyone who can't accept it is never gonna, unless they're very lucky, gonna learn how to make a fire. Right? So that's hierarchy. Right? So then, okay, we've sat down, we've made the fire, we're all nice and warm. Now we want a cup of tea. Or someone else knows how to make a cup of tea. So now there's another hierarchy, right? So, but it's a different person. So it's about a fluid hierarchy where it flows. I mean, we used to do free festivals. Woodstock was allegedly a free festival, though some people are saying it was all highly organised in order to convince people to take drugs to mash their brains up. But I don't agree with that, because pretty much all of my writing about the law, which is all simple enough for a 10-year-old to understand and will stand up in high court, right? All of it, without exception, hardly without exception, has been written under the influence of cannabis. So, yeah. So it didn't work. Woodstock was great.
Mm-hmm.
It had negative sides, but basically, when I argued earlier that it's reasonable, prudent, well-intentioned to shoot somebody in the street if they're shooting others, and to knock someone on the head and steal their gun and shoot that person with that gun, that's reasonable, prudent, and not criminal, right? You agree?
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
You talking to me?
Sorry. You looking at me?
Yeah, I do agree.
Right. So.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Reasonable, prudent, well-intentioned behaviour is not. Damn it, I've lost my thread.
Well, I'll tell you, we're coming up on 3 hours now.
Mm.
So I think it's about time to end this show, because I still got to edit it and get it up, and
God.
And it's 9 o'clock my time. It's, gosh, what is it your time? Like 3 in the morning or something?
2.
2.
Nearly 2. 8 minutes to 2.
Yeah. So
I'm just getting going. Colleen, I'm just getting going.
Whoa. Well.
Oh, talk to yourself. I've been on my own for 38 years most of the time.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just up for discussion. You know, that's all I'm saying.
Well, and I think, too, that a lot of this, you know, it seems to me that we keep kind of going back into the same sort of mindsets. And the whole thing is to kind of reinvent ourselves as a society, as a community, because what we've been living under for hundreds and hundreds of years just ain't working.
Right.
You know, there's so much fake stuff been thrown in there that we've been taught this is how you do things, and this is what society and civilization is all about, and it just isn't working for a majority of the people. You know, it's not just the small minority anymore that it's not working for. You know, those few people that are on the outskirts, it's the masses now.
Well, the people are waking up to the fact there's something wrong, right?
Yeah. So I think, you know, that we're going to have to redo a whole lot of thinking, you know, in my opinion, about how, and it may mean going back thousands of years to, you know, how things used to happen, how communities used to be, how everybody worked together as a whole instead of me and mine. It's ours.
Common self-interest.
Yeah, you know, because if you're, in my opinion, if you're doing things for the interest of all, then you're doing for yourself. Because as long as you're doing just for yourself, it ain't working.
Well, it doesn't work for yourself if it's just for yourself.
Yeah, because then it's me and mine, and you start wanting to guard it with a gun and a knife and all that kind of stuff. So
well, that whole thing's only because of deprivation, isn't it?
Well, it's a fear of.
Yeah, the fear of, exactly, due to experience as a child. Look at what happens to children. Look at what happens to what do you have to do to a male child to turn it into a creature which will chop down trees all day long? What kind of psychological abuse do you have to do to that child?
Well, I'm not sure that it's psychological. I think it's just, you tell them, I think that it's conditioning. You tell them, well, you know, we need you to chop down that whole forest so that we can build houses over here, you know, and make a lot of money and blah, blah, blah. So I'm not sure that it's psychological abuse. It's just you know, this is what I tell you, and everything I tell you is true, and it's right, and don't question me, just do it.
Right? But starting from the assumption, which is a bit of an assumption, that children are actually connected on a spiritual level with trees energetically, right? Much more than adults. Right? Starting from that assumption. And let's imagine ourselves, go back in a minute to being that fairy creature that is in touch with the natural energies and consciousness of nature, having lived in it for billions of years, allegedly. Certainly thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, even for aliens, but a long time we've been here. Living in that nature, it's beautiful. It's hard, and it's beautiful. And, it's not dog eat dog all the time. Any group of creatures living together don't eat or injure each other. Right, so it's not dog eat dog all the time. It's not like that. It's a myth. Right, it's a myth. A myth is a partial truth leading to a state of mind, right, which is hypnosis. It's telling a story and getting people relaxed, and then you suddenly put something in someone's mind, and suddenly they're doing something different. Well, that's exactly what I want to do. But the thought I want to put in people's mind is, instead of there's a problem we can't do something, there's a problem we can do something, and let's do it together now. State of emergency for the environment. Let's go tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Let's go. I'm simplifying it, but you get the picture. In 1939, when we had the Second World War in this country, rightly or wrongly against Hitler, right, but we did it. And guess who financed both sides of that war, right? We had a state of emergency. Britain's finest hour, all that business, patriotic, all together, God and Queen and country. Yeah, right. But the point is we did it, right? So that means that we can, practically speaking, declare a state of emergency for the environment, right? Same spirit of endeavour and working together immediately. It is a crisis. We need to act together. We need to do it now, right? That's what you call martial law, right? Or the sea law, the law of the sea, right? Because going back to my dad, skipper of a boat, he was a skipper of a sailing boat with a crew, traditional sailing boat called Provident. If you look at my Facebook profile picture, that's his boat. Not the profile picture, my landscape picture. That's the boat he was skipper of. My dad, teaching people how to sail ships. That's what he did. So I know a bit about naval discipline or ships, marine discipline, maritime law. Right? And as you do what you're told, when you're told, instantly, without question. That's what it comes down to. Ultimate fascist comes from the Latin fasces, meaning a bundle of sticks tied together with a corn rope. The sticks are the people, the corn rope is a common cause which unites the people. You can unite people with two things. You can use the carrot or the stick, because either you're moving towards something you want or away from something you don't want. So those are the two means of uniting people in a common cause. You can use that tool for beneficial purposes or malefic purposes. If you use it for beneficial purposes, that's what we call a benign hierarchy, and or a malign hierarchy would be when people use that skill, that ability to unite people for evil ends. Evil being live spelled backwards, by the way. Am I making any sense? Or I'm just carrying on, I'm ranting on.
Well, you are making sense, but yeah.
So I just want to say, finally, right, to wrap it up, right, if I try to wrap it up without getting diverted, which is what I was trying to do already, but to try, the object of a hypothetical group who would like to do some radio theatre is to take an audience who know there's a problem and think, what are we going to do? What can we do? We've got to go to work. We've got to pay the mortgage. We can't pay the kids. We can't feed the kids. We're going to get thrown out on the street. That person, right? Take that person, and in 15 minutes, by telling a story, the person leaves that theatre or ends watching that YouTube video in a state of mind, blimey, there is a problem. There is something we can do. Let's do it, right? And that thing is to invoke a state of emergency for the environment on the grounds of permaculture and the talking circle. I've talked to thousands of people, millions possibly, I don't know, many people over 38 years. The last time, can I just tell a little story, Colleen, and then we'll wrap it up?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. November the 5th, right, Anonymous have a demonstration. And in London, I didn't go this last year on November the 5th, I went the 2 years before. The first year I went, oh, that's right. There's a march from Trafalgar Square to Parliament Square, and it ends up outside Buckingham Palace. And traditionally now they shoot fireworks at Buckingham Palace, which is quite amusing. Right? And they bounce off the walls and the windows even. I think they've got bulletproof glass because they don't penetrate, they don't smash the windows when they hit the windows about fireworks. Anyway, they do that. That was the first year they went. The second year everybody went up to Buckingham Palace. I stayed behind because there was, interestingly enough, 300 Metropolitan Police officers in nice shiny uniforms standing in a row on the road, right, guarding the House of Parliament, so the likes of me couldn't go in there and make instant citizens' arrests on the criminals within. Anyway, there they were, armed to the teeth. Well, by our standards, armed to the teeth. But they were armed with cameras on their uniforms, right, and in a row. And I stood on the corner of the row. There was like an L shape, and I stood on the corner of the L. So they had their backs to the building in that. So they had like an arrow pointing at where I was standing, right? A 90-degree arrow. So I could see all of them, and I said to them, I've just arrested 350 Metropolitan Police officers without a single pair of handcuffs. I let that sink in. I said, how did I do that? Because you lot have got to stand there and listen to what I'm going to say. And I'm going to talk to you about the law. Right? Now, why would I come to London and talk to the Metropolitan Police about the law? Because I know for a fact that you don't know about the law. And how do I know that? Because I've been talking to the British Police Force for 38 years about the law, and I know for a fact you don't know about the law. But I'll tell you what, if you stand there and listen for 10 minutes, you will know about the law. Right? I proceeded to tell them about the prima facie principle. I told them that the government was criminal, having knowingly... Sorry, I just told them the whole thing that I've already gone about. Anyway, and I was filmed by 300 odd coppers doing that. Right? And I'm still doing it. I've been doing it every single day, 24/7, as much as I can on the internet, and I will continue to do it. And I have digressed. The purpose is to take people who think there's nothing we can do and change their state of mind into there is something, let's do it. And the thing to do is to create a beautiful place to live. Because in that environment, people will be less stressed, less likely to hurt each other, react against each other, because everybody will be basically happy. Working in a job, you can feel a genuine, heartfelt joy in what you're doing. That's the law. And we can use all reasonable means to achieve that aim, including citizens' arrests. I hope you're listening. Secret Services, citizens' arrests on the perpetrators. And who are the perpetrators? Well, follow the money. Follow the money. So I would suggest, as an immediate thing, first of all, we abolish usury. And that's only digital now, so that's not so hard. I'm sure anonymous hackers could soon sort that out and initiate something else. Second, we're not going to get rid of cash, because cash gives control to the government. In a cashless society, it's the end of democracy. There's no free speech, because in a cashless society, if you speak out, your cash gets turned off, your money gets turned off, your electronic money gets turned off. Right, so that's the end of free speech. Right, so we don't get rid of cash. Right, we don't really get rid of cash. We have a mixed economy. Right. So, the first thing then is to get rid of usury, maintain a mixed economy between cash and electronic, right? And then I would suggest that we've got a fairly good idea of who's rich and who isn't, who's got more money than who hasn't. I believe most, I don't know, some people might be very, very wealthy and hiding it completely. It's quite possible. But in general terms, the people that are responsible for the damage and destruction of the planet, right, the slave trade, the incitement of racial hatred, the genocide of 250 million odd servicemen and women over how many years, fighting international wars, financed by the same people, going right back to the times of the Khazars. There's only a few of them. The secret services know where they live. Right? And it's only a short journey to the nearest FEMA camp. Small place these days, the world. Donald Trump, he's a bit of a loose cannon. I don't quite understand his intent. I mean, he could be just kicking the ball around to get some reaction and see what happens, and then he'll go with the flow. You know, like if he says, right, we're going to build that pipeline, let's see what happens next. See what's happening. No, they're not going to do anything unless I kick their ass, right? So this is me being him, right? They're not going to do anything until I kick their ass, right? I'm going to sign that pipeline. See what happens. See what happens, right? Let's see who stands up, right? And he's the sort of geezer who's going to do that, right? Because remember, he does The Apprentice, right? He said he's going to do to the country what he does to his business. Well, let's see. Give him a chance. I think it's a chance to kick back. And okay, you know, I mean, I'm not condoning by any means. Well, the point is, we can do something. And the thing is to make people aware of the information. It's unlawful to pay tax until the government stop being criminal, get out of the way. And they're arrestable. Secret services. If everybody knew this information, the mortgage contract's unenforceable. It's a contract to commit crime. It's forcing people to commit a crime, destroying the planet against their will and better judgment. You're a doctor, you're fixing people after they've damaged themselves while going to work destroying the environment so they can go back to work and do it some more. If you're a psychologist, you're trying to convince people it's sane to destroy the planet, and anyone who says otherwise is insane. If you're a teacher, you're teaching kids they've got to go to work destroying the planet and never get a job when they grow up. You know, or an administrator, you're administrating it. There's very few jobs. I didn't say there's no jobs, but there's very, very few jobs which are not either doing it directly or party to it. So everybody's doing it. And I'm not blaming anybody. The sense that it's a mistake. Right? We've been suckered into doing this, rightly or wrongly. We've been suckered into this. We could go to work tomorrow morning and create a beautiful place to live. Right? We have the resources and technology, and that is the point of the piece of theatre.
Alrighty, we're going to wrap this up for this evening.
Anyone want to join the piece of theatre? Please get in touch with me. How can people get in touch with me? Email.
Your email. If you want to put all those back into the chat here for those who joined late, or they can contact me here either in the PM or whatever, private message on the chat, or my Facebook page or Skype, which is Colleen.Kelly917 on Skype. Or,
yeah, Skype's the best, isn't it?
Yes. Or Nick here is ecotort@gmail.com or Chet-Tort. How do you pronounce that? Eco? .tort.
Not ego, eco.
Eco, yeah.
That's my joke. It's my joke.
Okay.
Ego tort. In fact, the worst is ego tart when they say ego tart. It's easy. It's ego tort.
Okay. At Gmail. Sorry. He's also on Facebook. So there's lots of ways if you decide you want to be a part of this. And we will be doing other shows as well, from time to time. So just stay tuned. He'll have, I'm sure, much more up on his Facebook page, and I'll have it up on mine, and then on my personal one as well as the Haggie Shack Facebook page. So. And
please, can I? Have I got a minute or two on the chat to put a few things up for people?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we can end the show, and the chat's still going to be there.
All right, cool. Because I'll just put up sites that I put up before, so I can't remember which ones I did. But thanks, Colleen. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
When can we do it just randomly, or should we try and, I don't know, I'm so...
Well...
No, 2 o'clock. After 1 o'clock. In the morning, my time, which is an hour ago.
Well, we'll just have to see, because of my schedules, because I do have regularly scheduled live shows, right. And regularly scheduled shows for, like, other shows as well that are pre-recorded, which is something else that we can talk about, doing some pre-records, because they can be played any time, and then played periodically through the evening, because Haggie Shack does run 24/7. All I do is, for the pre-records, is throw them in my player and play them.
Okay.
So there's, lots of ways we can go with this. Well, several. I don't know about lots, but there's several. So,
is there a way we can have more people talking on a show like this?
Well, the problem with a whole bunch of people, I prefer to do it on Skype. One, because that's what I'm familiar with, and that's what we're doing now. And I have had up to 6, maybe 7 people on a Skype call.
That'd be plenty.
Often it depends on how much bandwidth everybody has.
Yeah.
So that you're not draining, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But, we can play it until we get something that works well for all of us. And we do want more than just, like Nick talking and me interfering. We want a lot of input, because this is going to take a lot of people to, with their heads together, so that you don't have some tyrant up there saying, well, this is what we're going to do, damn it. Like it or don't. So, yeah, we want a lot of people involved in all of this. I say we, Nick.
No, I do as many as possible. I mean, the world is our stage, and we've got a huge audience. And I just want to. It's open source, completely open source. The Talking Circle. Once it's there, it's open source, genuine open source democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That kind of hierarchy. It's like it goes towards the centre of a wheel. It's wheels within wheels. Right. Each one's a circle. Right. And the centre wheel is the boss. The boss is the centre of a hub.
I ain't liking boss. Anyway.
But they've earned that place there, you know what I mean? It's not like any old person. You don't like hierarchy?
No, I don't. I forgot what, we want to do this. We want people to start thinking outside the box, or outside the circle, so to speak. And a lot of people think, well, I'm not in that box. Well, often we jump from one box right into another one, and we don't realize that it's still a box until we look outside it.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I think that's it for this evening, Nick. And if you want to go ahead and continue to post links into the Haggie Shack one, because I don't, you can go ahead and do that. There will be a live show coming up on Wolf Spirit Radio at 10 o'clock. And there may be a live show going on now with Sam Muggsy, but Max Steele is going to be on at 10 o'clock, which is about 47-ish minutes. But, you're restricted as far as the live shows go and what can be posted. But Haggie Shack, as long as there's no, you're the host, and you can post whatever you want when you're hosting. And then we're not going to be live anymore on Haggie Shack, so post away in there whatever links and stuff you think.
I'll do that. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. It's wonderful. I want to do it again now.
Not now. Later. Down, boy.
All right. I'll go and find someone else to bother. I'm not in the mood for it now.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Nick.
Thank you so much. All right.
Good night.
You're going to cut it off? I don't know how to do it.
Yes. All I do is press the little red telephone.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.